The Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast and website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Sean.
Hello.
And Matt.
May you all have some great power from pain coming your way.
Yes, tonight we're going to talk Dark Eldar. So this is, again, another army review. So we have two parts. This is the first part where we're going to chat about the overview of Dark Eldar. We'll talk about the Kabals, the cults, the Covens, and some of the cool units they have. We also have an interview with Brian from Splintermind, who's going to cover a lot of the lore and the history of Dark Eldar, and probably nerd out a little bit on Dark Eldar because he's been with the Dark Eldar for a long, long time. I mean, he has an entire podcast devoted to Dark Eldar, for gosh sake. So we'll have an interview with Brian as well, and as well as cover the basics. Part 2, we'll have an interview with Scary from Scarredcast, who's the top Dark Eldar player now, and we'll talk a little more about playing Dark Eldar competitively. So This is going to be kind of a jam-packed two-part episodes here, and hopefully we'll cover as much as we can about, I keep calling them Dark Eldar, but they are actually called the Drukhari now, which, of all the names of the new Eldar names, Drukhari is the coolest, because I think it's Asuryani, which is Craft World, and then Eldari for the whole thing. Drukhari just has a nice ring. It's got a very, very Bela Lugosi ring to it, very Dracula.
Ooh, I like that.
Very Dracula sort of ring to
reference.
it, to the Drukhari. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes to catch all the latest episodes. You can follow us on Facebook under The Battlehosts. If you'd like to support The Battlehosts for as little as $1 a month, you can visit patreon.com/TheBattlehosts. If you donate to $3 a month, which I think is actually pretty reasonable, considering it's only $3, you get access to our Discord chat. Our Discord chat started kind of small, but right now it's growing, and we're actually have quite a bit of active conversations on Discord. So if you really want to support us at a $3 level, you can access our Discord chat. Before we get started, though, before we jump into the meat of Dark Eldar, and before we hear from Brian from Splintermind, let's hear from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40K, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40K events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40K events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these fine clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
All right, so we are going to talk the history of the Drukhari, or the Dark Eldar, and with me is Brian from the Splintermind podcast. How you doing, Brian?
Doing good.
Now, Brian, you have an entire podcast devoted to the Drukhari. And how long, how did that all start? I mean, you've been able to do it for quite a long time. And it's, and Dark Eldar are not the most popular of armies. They're kind of but they have a dedicated fan following. So, I mean, how long have you been, how have you been able to keep going with this for as long as you have?
Well, the whole idea of starting one happened at the darkcity.net. There were a couple of guys that were talking about, some of the admin were talking about doing a, podcast for the forum itself. And I got roped into it because actually I volunteered to make bumper music for it. I'm a musician, and I thought, I'll do that. And the funny thing is, I haven't made a second of bumper music for this show ever, and just kind of got roped into doing it. And the show's just kind of evolved. I mean, when it came out initially, the funny thing was it came out to. I mean, we'll get into this when we go into the history of the army, but we were talking about this a few months before they announced the Codex was coming out in 7th edition. So we'd been playing with the 5th edition, which I thought was a really good Codex for the time. And it was, it'd fallen behind a little bit, but it was still working. And then, those were dark days in the beginning because it was like the 7th edition Codex came out and we were like, okay. So I learned how to be really optimistic about things. And, we've just kind of kept it going. And like you were saying, it's more that Drukhari have such a rabid following, so it's one of those things where the show will always be self-limiting in that since it's not a general appeal thing, it really has like there's a fence at the edge of that property. It doesn't just expand into other areas,
Sure.
but at the same time, the people you get are really hardcore dedicated to it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we brought you on to talk about the history or the lore of the Dark Eldar / Drukhari. Let's talk the history of the race itself and the lore. Tell us who are the Drukhari? What are they all about?
So the funny thing is, when they say Drukhari, I really feel like they should just be saying Eldari.
Yep.
Because when you get into the story of the fall, you have the whole weird transition in that when the army first comes out, everything in 40K is more or less the fantasy version, So Eldar are elves, orcs, hey, are orcs. The Imperium is the Empire. There's a direct translation, and so in fantasy, you've always had, because Games Workshop clearly lifted all their early stuff from other pre-existing things.
Oh yeah,
you have elves and dark elves, or some sort of evil elf type.
Yeah,
and so they really kind of get I feel like they really get misnamed early on when they say that, oh, these are the dark Eldar. And people were excited when they first came out because it was like, who doesn't love dark elves in fantasy?
Yeah.
There's that great thing to play those two, high elves and dark elves off of each other.
Yeah.
But when you get into the story of the fall, the Drukhari, people think of Craftworld Eldar as being Eldar.
Yeah.
And what you really have to think of is those guys are really the uptight, puritanical offshoots that sort of saw like, wow, this entire race this is not going to end well. Take off and do their thing. Even the Exodites, sort of same thing. Those are like instead of the puritanical ones, I guess they're like the hippies that go off and decide they're going to go off the grid.
Yeah.
And, and do their own thing. And the Drukhari are just the ones who just kept the party going.
Yeah.
So I don't really see them as being, they're sort of, they get lumped into being a sub-faction, but really those are, another term people use for them is calling them the true kin, because they're just the ones that kept going. They just never stopped partying.
Yep. Yeah, they just kept the only. I think the biggest difference, of course, is they have stopped using psychic power. So the Eldar was a very psychically gifted race. The Dark Eldar said, "Okay, there's one limit to our partying ways, and that's using psychics." So they've at least gone off the they've been able to wean themselves off their psychic power. But for the most part, that's their only real rule. Like that's really. I don't know if there are any other rules among this society except for obviously might is right and the strongest survive. But pretty much the only thing else they do is they just don't use psychics.
Yeah, and it's funny because it seems funny that I don't know. It's like they're sitting there partying hard, and there's just like, there's one rule.
There's one rule.
There's no rules, sir. Put that psyker away. There's one rule. Like that's. Yeah, it's a funny thing, and which is interesting because that's one thing where we're just dark elves in space doesn't port over, because dark elf magic tends to be in fantasy games tends to be pretty powerful offensive stuff, as to where maybe the high elves or Craftworld Eldar type in games tends to be a little more defensive or augmenting
blessings or whatever.
Yeah. So they've been an interesting bird since the beginning, and I think that. Especially when you get into the 5th edition Codex, they've really expanded the lore on it and sort of defined the 3 different sub-factions and even the sub factions of, Blades for Hire and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so, we talked about the fall and the Eldar race. The Drukhari are what the Eldar were just before the fall, before Slaanesh was birthed, and the Eye of Terror was created as a result of the Eldar being wiped out. And the Exodites are the kind of the we would say the hippies or the survivalists who wanted to live off the grid, and so they left. Craftworld were more the Puritan types that took off in Craftworld ships. Like, you guys are a little too freaky for us. And then the Dark Eldar just kept going. How did they survive the fall? Like everything else was, most of the Eldar race was wiped out. How did the Dark Eldar survive?
So it's the whole thing where, it's this interdimensional, they live in the webway, basically. So, that their whole society had been carved out. The webway was used for travel, right? So you could go between worlds without having to actually hop in a ship and do your whole thing and go through the warp. And so it's sort of this magical doorway shortcut system where you can just travel places throughout the galaxy with it. And Camorra, the city, is just this. It's just sort of this den of hedonism that just develops and expands. When you get into some of the books, like Andy Chambers' series, he really goes into sort of some of the sub-realms within the webway, and so there's some of the worlds that are amazing. I mean, when he doesn't intentionally go in and, explain everything, but you start to see the economy of Camorra, where there's one noble house that their whole thing and their whole claim to power is that they have control over this realm where it's basically just a giant ocean where there are just these, it's where the food comes from, so it's really, it's an amazing little terrible dark society that just kind of plays itself out.
Which, I have to admit, the Andy Chambers series is really good, though. It's the the Path of the Warrior, Path of the Renegade, and Path of the Archon. Because when you read it on paper, you're like, how does a society like this actually survive and not just be completely destroyed? But there is a certain amount of, there is a pecking order, and there's a certain amount of structure, and you see that kind of in the units as well, that exist in Camorra that makes sense, especially when you read the books, because when you read it on paper, you're like, I just don't know why they just don't kill each other. Well, they do kill each other, but there's certain societies, there's certain teams, there's certain different cults and things that exist within this city that people band together for survival, basically, and for power, which is what Dark Eldar are all about, or Drukhari.
Well, it's looking at a really well-developed authoritarian style society. Because if you have a society where everybody is on equal footing and they're all hungry for power, you're going to have anarchy and murder, and it's just going to be unstable. You do end up having these larger houses that, they're always jockeying for position, but there's some of the houses like, Vect clearly, is at the top of the food chain there, and just through force of, will and cunning and, murder and whatnot, you're able to just keep everything else in check. So it's this weird system where there's enough. It's not like, sorry, I'm a history teacher, so I always go to history. This isn't like, people make the argument that during the Cold War, when you have this bipolar world, with two powers and other countries aligned with them, and then you have third world countries that are unaligned, that actually kept the world safer in a weird way, unless you're in one of those countries where they're doing a proxy war, that type of a thing. I think Camorran society is really like that. Is that you have with enough strong factions that are there, it keeps some of the smaller ones in check, and maybe they'll kind of fight each other to ease tensions or gain a little bit of an advantage through lower houses and alliances and that kind of a thing. But otherwise, it's just a nasty place that has kind of sorted its way out.
And it's what's interesting about the Drukhari too is that they were the original nobles of Eldar society. They were rich. They had they were powerful houses to begin with. The reason they had this place in Camorra, this awesome real estate inside the webway that allowed them to do the things they did, was because they were from powerful noble houses that just got more and more depraved. That's kind of there's a regalness to Dark Eldar that you can see with the models, and you can kind of see with some of the titles of the characters, but that still kind of exists, and I kind of like that. I like the fact that they have this twisted nobility about them. Which kind of appeals to the fact that they have they're kind of a Roman analog in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and there really is. It helps to sort of sort of being started by this is the play place of nobles. It really helps to kind of play up that whole they aren't just arrogant because they have pointy ears and they're fast. It's just they're arrogant because they're born of arrogance and hedonism, and it's not only that they're arrogant nobles and have power and resources to go and do a thing like this, it's also look what we got away with. So it's just it really is like all of the really negative qualities we can associate with arrogance and too many resources.
They're the top, not even the top 1%. They're way up there. Earthly, certain considerations of lesser races, they wouldn't cross their mind because they have the access to these things. And you mentioned that, especially in Warhammer Fantasy, Dark Eldar and Eldar, or dark elves and elves, typically are antagonistic. What is the relationship between Drukhari and Craftworld Eldar or Astrani?
This is the whole thing where you have to factor in the fact that Eldari are a dying race, that their numbers are dwindling. And so, like anything, need will, need will allow you to look the other way with certain morals. I actually, initially, it was funny, in 6th edition when they had an ally system introduced, I really struggled with the idea of playing Eldar and Dark Eldar on the same table. I'm like, this is just anything that just like takes me out of the game and background and awesome hobby and, visual painted armies and lore and that stuff turns me off. It just seemed like too much like Dark Eldar have a glaring weakness in psychic defense and psychic offense. Now you can just take craft world allies and fix that and plug holes that used to be there for internal game balance.
Sure.
But in the lore, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, when you get into different, because really it's like if we were at war with alien societies and we're struggling for survival, I mean, it's sort of like, think of it like now, if you think of tensions between Europe and Asia over trade and those types of things,
sure.
Or the Middle East or, anything like that. I mean, think of it in those terms. I mean, if it really came down to it and it was humanity versus fill-in alien race that threatens our survival, you would look past all of that.
Yeah.
For the survival of the human species. And so you really have to look at it that way. Now, there are specific factions that they do mention that have allied or warred with other ones. And the tension is even interesting, too, because you do have, there's a great story. I want to say it's the Prophets of the Flesh, a Dark Eldar Coven, which, I mean, they're the ones, the flesh crafters and, sort of
Urian
dark
Arkarth's,
there's a great story where they actually come and aid the Iandin, and they absolutely love this idea that the Iandin are basically dealing with necromancy, because they're like, well, you make fun of us for all these things, and look at you. You got like dead suits walking around, and you're worried about where your soul goes. It's like, hey, you want to... Your buddy's dead. You want him back? You got a toenail? I can do it. So.
The Iandin. Well, that's interesting because the Dark Eldar, they have lots of numbers. Because Eldar, they're a dying society, but Dark Eldar use the cloning. They clone their numbers.
Right.
So most of their warriors are vat-grown Eldar.
Right.
Why don't the craft world decide to do that? I mean, is it something about... I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out why wouldn't Craft World have just the numbers, the same technology that Dark Eldar do?
Yeah, you'd think at a certain point with the Iandin, they would look around and say, I know it's not the finger quotes right way to do it, but we're all dying here.
Yeah, maybe.
That's actually a great question. I don't know why that is. I mean, I wonder.
It must be a soul thing,
that's what I would think it would have to be.
They're big into souls. Warhammer. AOS, Age of Sigmar is the same way. We have the Deepkin that have like a half a soul or withered souls,
right.
and they talk souls all the time, and maybe Dark Eldar just don't care. Whatever. I don't know what that means. I'm just going to keep murdering things.
Well, I mean, all of their souls are flawed anyways. I mean, that's part of that whole... I think Jess Goodwin described it as a bucket, that as a hole in it. And, the older and more powerful you get, the bigger that hole gets, to where you have to constantly keep filling it.
Yeah.
So they use the suffering of others to sustain themselves and do that, to keep that little bit of their soul that's being siphoned off to Slaanesh from fully consuming them.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. I still don't know why they don't borrow a couple clone vats. I'm sure there's reasons why. But if you don't know, then it must be about that. It must be the soul thing, or it must be just the craft worlds have high standards. For everything. Maybe
they're a little uptight, a little rigid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they walk a path.
Yeah.
As to where the Drukhari are just.
Yeah.
The world is their oyster. Where they're going, they don't need roads. Yeah. That's all we got.
And so the Drukhari, I mean, until the 6th edition Allies chart came out, the relationship between Dark Eldar and Eldar seemed, I guess, antagonistic. But I don't know if did they really even say that they were? I mean, were they just another race to battle against? I guess I don't know if they really got into the relationship between those two before Allies came out.
Well, it's a whole issue. I mean, even when you look at like the Rogue Trader it was basically an RPG with tabletop rules.
Oh yeah.
The original ones were Corsairs, and Corsairs are this sort of weird that can draw from all different elements of Eldar society. Because even Craft World is good. They go through their artist phase and their warrior phase and their emo pirate phase, or everybody gets to sort of do their own thing to explore different aspects rather than just do all of it all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I feel like it's been with us long enough that we haven't thought too far back, and it makes sense. I guess it's one of those things where maybe they mentioned they said, "Oh, the Allies chart." It's like, well, look, the Eldar are a dying race; they will band together. Everything you just said makes a lot of sense. Maybe they just never bothered to really say it. So when they finally said, "Well, this is how they can ally," it's like, "Oh, well, okay." I guess in its face value, it seems to make some level of sense.
It also helps to play up the motivation of Dark Eldar is that, and this is where they run into a weird spot where I don't know if they can really do a campaign with them unless it's against other Eldari factions for some long-standing grudge. Because when Drukhari, when you see them on the tabletop, this is a raid. This isn't part of a longer war or campaign that they're necessarily fighting. And so, I think with the Eldari thing, I think with it being a very fluid situation is that, they can be friends one day and stab you in the back the next, is because anytime they go out on a raid, it's generally about resources, and, resources can be suffering or specifically slaves or, whatever they need. So I think that's how it can work. As far as having like a stated rivalry, there are a couple ones that they'll mention sort of in passing, usually a lot of times with the lesser, that sounds awful. That sounds judgy.
Yeah.
One of the less fleshed out, we'll say that, craft worlds. A lot of times they'll talk about different. So like Ibrasil, they'll talk about them specifically fighting with this Harlequin faction or different things like that. So you have those tensions within society, but in the end, it's a dying race, and so you got to do what you got to do at some point. So it creates a narrative where you can do any of that stuff. Yeah,
and obviously there's been. If you think about the world spirit that was used in the Dark Eldar books, the Path, there's the short story with the Harlequin short story with Motley in it, where the Dark Eldar was basically was raiding a craft world, but the Harlequins kind of set the scales right. So there may be these instances where they have renegade factions to go off to fight, against Eldar, but in general, I think. The Eldari society, they kind of frown. So the Dark Eldar, basically, the world is their oyster, except for other Eldar, and occasionally they do slip into fighting other Eldar or messing with them. But if they do, there seems to be repercussions, and it usually is. If funny enough, it feels like the Harlequins are the ones that are like, okay, hey guys, because they're the kind of intermediaries between the two, and they'll kind of set things straight in some strange way, but Yeah.
Well, and it's also, I think it's also a resource thing. You aren't going to, they don't necessarily want to go after a craft world because later it might be something that they need. So you're weighing what you're going to get out of the raid versus how this might come back to bite you in the rear. So
versus just find some Imperial planet that's not very well defended, and then there you go, boom.
Right.
I've filled up my quota. So and I guess that's the thing with Drukhari. With every other race, they just view them as essentially resources. Like they're not much different than. I guess if there is a true evil in the universe, Tyranids eat to survive. It's just what they do. Dark Eldar, other things are resources, but they're resources for a specific sadistic need, which is to fill their souls with pain. Well,
like anything in ethics, evil is relative,
sure,
right? And it's culturally relative. It's in this case, is it more evil to kill you because they need to feed off of your suffering than it is to go kill a chicken because you want a chicken breast? You know what I mean? Like it's which of you're doing it for sustenance.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe you aren't like, killing the chicken in a really slow and terrible way. Well, or if you are, let's call the police. But like there's, it's relative, and it's kind of like in ethics, they get into a thing in bioethics where they ask the question like, okay, if fish lacked nociceptors, can they actually feel pain?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they can't actually feel pain, is torturing a fish wrong?
Yeah.
Because if suffering... So you get into a lot of weird things with this, but
I feel like that you're is this what Dark Eldar players use to sort of justify?
Well, to be fair, I also am getting ready. I'm wrapping up my school year, and I'm getting ready. In the fall, I teach a bioethics class every 3 years. So my head is kind of in ethics land right now.
Well, and I guess that's fair to say that all Eldar, especially Dark Eldar or Drukhari, view other races as inferior. So to them, there is no other race out there that is anywhere near them. They don't have the same. They don't have any level of respect for that. I mean, even Astartes are. They still view them as gorillas, really, really strong, dangerous gorillas, but they're essentially they are apes to their mind.
Yeah, even the story arc with Ibrain and the Inari, I mean, getting Gilliman back and doing all these sorts of things, I mean, they're a useful tool in a fight.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, they're a resource.
Yeah, there you go. So, the Dark Eldar Society, I mean, you talked about Vect being at the very tippy top, and we have we have Kabals, and we have Covens, and we have witch cults. What are the differences between Kabals versus cults versus Covens?
So when you think of the Kabals, it's funny, my friend Jody always refers to Dark Eldar, on the table he refers to them as like being like these little tiny individual kind of crime syndicates that are going out, where you have these individual factions that, they'll work together to do certain things. But within society, I mean, you have the Kabals, which are sort of the armed households that will hold territory, feud with each other, this, that, and the other. Yeah. The Coven, which have always been my favorite, are really, these are the flesh crafters. Yeah. And so they do things. I mean, if you compare them to doctors in a really kind of sick way, there's some of the ones that do, we just do cosmetics. You want, quilled feathers or whatever the deal is, you can do that. If you want to become a scourge and you have the resources, they can graft wings and do this whole thing. If you've crossed them in the wrong way, or somebody else has been crossed and they pay you enough, they can do really horrible things to you. I mean, this is where grotesque comes from. Yeah. But I mean, they are the flesh crafters. And so their thing really is, like you were mentioning, cloning being an important part to their society. They're the ones that do that. So if you have warrior households that go out, somebody's killed, you bring back a finger, you bring back a piece of it, and they can regrow the person. So they have their technology. It's so mysterious and so arcane that it almost looks like magic. Yeah. And so they really bring in this like great evil fairy tale element to them, but they're necessary in that. I mean, you don't the Covens or the Cabals can't go to war without a steady supply, so they need them. Yeah. And you get into the witch cults. The witch cults are really necessary for entertainment. I mean, this is just like in the Roman Empire. I mean, you give entertainment, even within those things, people get like a little bit of a fix off of that. But it's like it was used in Roman culture, where it's something a system of control. Like if you have violence that people get to watch and experience, it can satiate some of that need to help hold society in check. Yeah. And so all of them need each other. And then you get into sub-factions, like you have mandrakes, which are essentially demonic. They are essentially demonic Eldar, right? And so they have, they're useful in their own thing. You have the incubi, which are basically the, Drukhari aspect warrior. You have the scourges, which are sort of messengers and these types of things. And so all these things work together in this weird sort of symbiotic balance. Yeah. Yeah. And mandrakes to me are the most interesting in that they're Dark Eldar. I didn't realize they were even Eldar for a long time. Right. They just seem so mysterious. And even in the Path books by Andy Chambers, they mention them, but they still don't really describe them. They're just, do they exist? They exist inside the webway, or they sort of like, what is the origin of a mandrake? How does a mandrake even exist? Well, I think you have to think about, this is where, with having all the different sub-realms of Camorra, you can get into things where you can have, because in the fall, certain sections obviously are lost. You have just complete crone worlds that are demon worlds. Yeah. That leaves a lot of wiggle room And so the mandrakes, it allows, were they in a section that was slightly corrupted by chaos? You can get into that where they have, where they're affected by that. Is it something that the Covens did to some of them? There's a little bit of room there with it. Yeah. And I mean, they're just great because they add to that whole nightmare fairy tale thing where, here are ones that, they're faceless, right? Yeah. Like they don't have mouths and they sort of slip in and out and do that sort of a thing. So they just add to that whole kind of mysterious bleed from the shadows boogeyman.
Yeah. And it also means too that should they desire, they could explore a lot more aspects of Drukhari. Yes. Not even just Eldari, with more slightly chaos infected or demon infected Eldar that could exist in different sort of subrealms. They really could. I mean, the Ynnari is a way to kind of expand the Eldar range, but they could go a little deeper if they wanted to look at this.
Well, they went too deep with Mandrakes initially, because you did have a special character. That, I mean, he had 4 arms, so that's where it might tie in the whole Coven thing. I mean, I'm assuming the guy was modified at some point, but that was a story arc that thankfully they just let go.
What was the name of the character?
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of flesh out the character, and he's got all these skulls, and he has them all pointing in some direction. And what happens when he gets the final one, or when it reaches critical mass? Who knows? And I would say, who cares? I'm willing to let that storyline go.
Yeah, but seriously, the character's name was what was it called again? It wasn't Skull Taker. It was the Decapitator. That's right, the Decapitator.
Yes, he has an actual Drukhari sounding name that I'm not going to bother because it's. Yep. He's been terrible on the table. They've never made a model, and I'm okay with that. They don't need that.
Well, and so going back to the game history. This new codex, we think it's one of the greatest in this edition, in that it has a ton of flavor and it's interesting, and it literally is 3 codexes in one plus auxiliaries.
Yes.
And you were involved a lot in sort of the playtesting of this, and obviously you can't talk too much about the process of that, but the actual codex itself, there's a lot to love in this codex, and you could tell that there's a lot of interesting rules versus others. And I guess, was this always the case? I mean, was this something that, I guess, how much can you tell us about, like, how did this codex evolve during the testing, or was it always just good the way it is?
So here's the thing. I mentioned this on Splintermind when we did our codex review. And the funny thing was, I didn't know that we were even going to get to talk about it until there was a listener that was at LVO that messaged us through our Facebook page and was just like, man, they just announced the Dark Eldar Codex is coming out, and that's so rad that you guys got to work on it. And I'm like, what?
They outed you, basically.
They did, and I didn't know that was happening. And so then it was like a weird thing where, okay, well, now I can talk about it. But the problem was, as people were hearing little leaks, they didn't know the entirety of the Codex. And so they were hearing like these little snippets, and they were like getting mad, like, why did you sign off on this? And I kept trying to tell them, we didn't write the Codex. I mean, I can say this. When they sent the Codex to us, the Codex, when we first got it, before, I mean, there were changes that we suggested that they put in, but there were also changes that they did themselves after the initial version. But I can tell you this, if the initial version was the one that went to print, it would have been good.
Yeah.
It's just, what was nice was just that they really wanted to get a feel. They wanted Dark Eldar to have the feel that they should. They wanted the units to all have very individual roles. They like having little pieces of lore worked in, so there are certain things, like if you look at like Tormentors, right? That the Incubi have. That's something that has been mentioned since 3rd edition, but it never made it onto the models. And so little flavor things like that are what really set all these different units apart. And I think I don't want to. They had a really good codex that was out before, and so what was nice was with us as hardcore Dark Eldar fans, we were really able to go in and help just like give little nudges and suggestions. Some of the ones and it's not like we said, oh, change this to,
sure.
weapon skill 3+, or, we didn't say to do any of that stuff. Sometimes like I can say this, that you can give them suggestions like, hey, in the lore, they talk about this and it's just never shown up on the table. I'm not even sure what that would look like. And then they would come back and like, here you go. And you're like, holy crap, that's a great way to do it, to give them the flavor without being overbearing and without being just a mountain of special rules that are highly situational, So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I was so glad that the Codex was as well received as it was, because there was a lot of work that was put into it on Games Workshops. And we gave as many suggestions as we possibly could. And, I was absolutely pleased when that thing came out. Yeah, and I think also we should clarify too, when we say you guys were there are other playtesters, and so right. And I know your playtesting. Obviously, you probably provided lots of input on the strength of things, but there are dedicated playtesters that will basically are about game balance. But the Drukhari Codex has got so much interesting lore to it and interesting rules that you see the amount of care that they kind of put into it. And there's other. I think the Orc Codex is one that has just a ton of flavor to it, and that it's interesting because something could be underpowered, but if it's interesting, then it makes a lot of sense. Like there's something there that's you can grab onto. This much I can say. They want units to have they want there to be a choice. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, it's kind of gone to the point where Ravagers with Disintegrators are just such a point efficient, obvious. Just start a list with 3 of those. Prior to this codex, you would start a list with 3 with lances. Mm-hmm. Like that was just a thing. So there are some of those just kind of auto includes that I think. I'm sure and there's no inside knowledge on this. I'm sure there will be some points adjustments, not major ones. Initially, when this codex came out, I thought, wow, these are really cheap point wise. But then the chapter approved that followed it brought the rest of the game in line. So it was like, okay, they're looking at where this is going to go. But I mean, the thing about points is those are easy to get adjusted. But an interesting rule or an interesting interaction is something that is, to me, is the worthwhile aspect of it. Now, we talked about how this codex is really, really interesting and it's got a lot of depth to it. The 7th edition codex was pretty terrible in that it stripped away almost all the flavor. Yes. And you talked about a good codex. The 5th Ed Codex that Dark Eldar had was their reboot. Like 5th Ed was their... It had the power from pain mechanic. I had tokens, right? That you basically... And it was a little bit of bookkeeping, but that was also the relaunch of the line in mostly plastic. That 5th Ed Dark Eldar was... I'll call it Dark Eldar because that's what it was at the time. That was really their change. Like that was when they're like, oh, okay, these guys are a faction again. Remember this faction that only like a handful players still remember? Then boom, here we go. This is the reboot that we needed, the refresh. Oh man, I was still playing them in 5th edition, and I remember in the basic rule book, where they go through all the different races, there was that illustration with the raider that clearly wasn't the old school, 3rd Ed Raider that had the sail on it. Yeah. With Kabalite warriors jumping off of it, and I was just like, oh, maybe. And then when it happened, I lost my mind. Yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah, and that was back in the day when an army release was a massive thing. Right. I mean, now we get a couple models or whatever, and it's still, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff getting put out right now, but back then an army release was once every... Dark Eldar hadn't been touched in 5 years previous to that? Maybe. Oh, previous to that, hadn't been touched. I mean, because that would have been, I want to say that was around, it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago? Yeah. It was like 2011, I want to say that it came out. Because I remember that I was on my honeymoon in Puerto Rico, and my wife was taking way too long, and that's when I found the darkcity.net. I was on my phone with a Wi-Fi connection going, there has to be Dark Eldar stuff. I'm so excited for all this. So, But prior to that, I mean, there was like the 3.5 or 3.1, whatever you want to call it, 3.5, where it was just, okay, here's the same codex with a couple of War Gear editions. But other than that, they'd been trucking with the old, original 1998 or 99, whatever it was, third edition codex.
And even the plastic stuff that came out back then, I mean, there's been a couple, like the flyers are new. There's a couple new things, but they're still really good. Like they still feel fresh and new to me. I mean, even like a Cabalite Warrior box still feels like a great infantry squad. They're nice. When we say 5th Ed plastics, that was kind of when they were really hitting their stride. I mean, obviously they've gotten a lot better even since then, but I still think Dark Eldars are great. Raiders and Ravagers and, the Gunboat and the Venoms, they're still fantastic kits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the 7th Ed Codex comes out. It's fairly dull. It kind of sucked the life. The Power from Pain mechanic was changed.
Yeah.
And I believe that's when they lost a lot of their special characters. Is it not? Isn't that when they lost, I'm talking Duke Silicious, the Duke.
Silicious was gone. Yeah, they lost some of that stuff, and some people thought it was, the whole lawsuit with Chapter House, and if they don't have a model for it, they aren't going to make rules for it. I don't know how much of it is that, but yeah, when it came out, and remember, this was, like I mentioned earlier, this is when we started Splintermind.
Yeah, and
I remember just getting the book and just going, I'm doing a show on this. I'm doing a show dedicated to this. And I'm like, well, it's good that Drukhari or Dark Eldar at the time, fans are so hardcore because, man, I kind of felt like polishing a turd, really like talking glowingly about the thing. But initially I was trying to in my head, I was thinking, okay, some of the earlier codexes might have gone a little too far. Maybe they're going to streamline the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe this will be because I remember fondly back to when the game switched to 3rd edition and everybody was playing out of the list that were in the basic rulebook. Mm-hmm. Those were some of the best games because there weren't it wasn't the 2nd edition wackiness of 5 million cards and all these different things. And you didn't have Superhero Hammer. And at the time you thought stuff died really fast, and games were great. And I thought, well, maybe they're going back to that. Maybe they're going to streamline the game and do these things. And then we were talking earlier, I think it was Blood Angels and Orcs came out after that. And they did the same thing where they just kind of watered them down and vanillaed it. And we're like, okay. And, they had formations, but the formations were a joke. It's there was one of the ones, I'm trying to remember what it was. I remember I added up the points and I'm like, okay, if you take the minimum number of units in this formation, it was something ridiculous. It was it's 2,100 points before you upgrade or add a single model.
Yeah, they were APOC,
to this thing.
They were APOC level things. It was an APOC, an apocalypse level mechanic that they kind of, and formations at the time. You're right. They were ridiculous. So you just didn't run them. They were fun.
Right. And then following that, then you get, the Necron Decurion thing where it's okay, you have these slots, but you can fill them with numerous things. And you're like, okay, well, this is a different game. You're going to go back and give these to everybody else, right? And it never happened. And so you had to win on the basic tools were there, as far as they've always had fast armies, cheap troops, great firepower, you just fast glass hammer army. So you had to win using tactics because you didn't have gimmicks. Other people could just take, especially when they started getting into the War Convocation or the what was the Space Marine one?
Battle Brothers. Yeah, Battle Company. Where
it was this is so easy to fill with just cheap nonsense, you know that. And you would get these, and you get free transports, Well, as a Drukhari player, you're like, I can't compete with any of that, so I'm just going to have to win using tactics. And so in a weird way, I think it actually I think that's why when 8th edition hit, you look at Boise Cup a couple of years ago, Jack Gerlicher wins it because he knew how his units worked. And then when all of a sudden you take away all of these just nonsense bonuses, you're playing just with the things in the profiles. Yep. It's amazing.
Yeah, because that was Index 40K at the time, because that was a week after 8th came out. It was all Index.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. He knew how his army worked, and they worked very well in 8th edition, and he just did his thing in it. That's why I think with this codex, now that things are on a lot more equal footing, I think that's why there's such a powerful army now. And to me, I was listening to shows where this was a funny thing. I remember I was listening to other shows to hear what their thoughts were on the 8th edition Drukhari Codex when it came out, because I worked on it, and I'm like, hey, what do they think? And there were people that were losing their minds on shows that, I consider these guys well-versed in the game. There were guys that were losing their minds over basic profile things that have been exactly the same for multiple editions. They're like, all of their transports are fast and they're open topped and they carry a heavy weapon. Do you know how nuts that is? I'm like, that's been nuts since 1998. Like,
it's always been a thing. Yeah. But in this new edition, you know, Drukhari have speed, and firepower, and with Coven units, they have durability. They have, the only thing they don't have is psychics. Right. And even, yes, you can ally in, Eldar, but now that they've changed Doom to only affect Craftworld Eldar units, they don't really have that anymore. So, but even without the psychic phase, Dark Eldar have all the pieces and parts to be a competitive, you know, an army. But I think most importantly, especially for, you know, what we've been talking about, is they're interesting. You can build interesting things from them, and they feel like they should feel. When you read the books and read the stories and you look at them on the tabletop, they play the way you kind of in your mind picture them playing. Yes. And I think that's like that's the highest level of compliment we can give to a codex in this edition, really, is that. Right.
They look right and they translate well game wise. And when you're playing them, you know, we actually had not to pump Jack Ehrlicher's tires twice or anything, but we actually had an episode before this edition that was real space rating for noobs, right? Where we brought Jack on, and it was like your guide to, you know, for a new player, because they have traditionally been a very difficult army for new players to pick up. And one of the things that he said, he's like, you have to think and play like an Archon. Like you have to sacrifice your cheap units. You're not going to charge your Archon straight into a fair fight. You need to gang up on things. And if you play them like that, they're a really fun game. And when you get to play against another fast, hard-hitting army like Craftworld Eldar, that and other Drukhari armies are my favorite ones to play against with this army, because it's just such a white-knuckled, you know, adrenaline-fueled rush. I'm having a hard time sitting because I'm like, I want to jump up and like punch the ceiling because I'm so excited about how they play.
I mean, in Drukhari or not, I mean, Craftworld Eldar traditionally have been more of an elite army, and I think that's you're right. Eldar players, they try to play Dark Eldar as you have lots of units. Things are very efficient in the Dark Eldar army. You can afford to sacrifice one of 9 Venoms for a certain reason. Yeah. Now, all the named characters, we mentioned the Duke, but there's also several Lady Malice, Vect, and there's a lot of them that have been lost over the years, and this codex doesn't have them. Right. Do you think they'll bring them back?
I could see a couple of them. I could see. Yeah. I could see bringing Lady Malice back, because you could have this sort of, there's that whole thing with her and Vect, and you could bring it back, but it would have to be in a campaign type of setting. Like that's kind of how I see it going forward, is that they're probably, you know, I mean, they previewed that Iron Hands character.
Oh, that's true. Coming out. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, so I think that's what we're going to get in the future, is just kind of a smattering of this, a smattering of that. But Vect, so it was interesting. The independent characters had a Heroes of the Xenos type thing or whatever it was, and Justin on there brought up exactly what I would have said about Vect. I was just like, right on, bro. Fist bumping nobody in my car. Was that he brought up a great point, that why would Vect go on the battlefield? No. He's better as this just omnipresent boogeyman. Yeah. You know, than he is. I don't want to see a custom raider on the table, because when you have something, to me, it ruins the mystique of characters. You know, like for me, it's like Custodes. Custodes were always this great thing you would see in illustrations, and they're mysterious, and you can imagine how amazing and badass they are. But then when you actually see them on the table and you kill one, you're like, you know, T5, 3 wounds. I don't know. You know, I don't know that I like it. So even like the Baron, the Hellion character. Yeah. I just don't see them. I honestly don't see them bringing it back. I mean, if anything, I would actually like to see them. Lady Malice, I would like to see, because her storyline is so interesting. Yeah. I would like to see new characters, to be honest. Yeah. No, I mean, they have an entire society to draw from. I mean, they don't. They could literally come up with a new Dark Eldar character, and no one would bat an eye, because it's not retconning anything. It's not changing the lore around. And I think the thing about Vect is, I don't know that Vect's rise to power is interesting, because he wasn't
born of nobility.
Right.
But he's just such a omnipresent, awesome guy. He's just so evil, but so good at being that, and so strong and so powerful. And anyone who's ever tried to cross him, gets what's coming to them. You're right. I think having him on the table. That said, they have put lots of characters on the tabletop that I think you sort of go, why would they put this big baddie on the tabletop? It does tend to kind of ruin the mystique a little bit.
Right.
But I don't know if Vec's story is that interesting. I mean, he's just the guy that runs the society. He's really tough. Like he doesn't have an interesting hook to him. He's not, like Gilliman coming back was kind of this thing where he's, and he's also conflicted and he's trying to do the best he can. And he is an interesting character. Vectin himself, I don't find him terribly interesting. I know you may disagree as a Dark Eldar player, but he's just, he's just good at being bad at everything he does. Has he ever failed? I don't think so. It's always like, oh, Vect did this, it was all part of his cunning plan, and then now he's back on top again. So I don't know. I find him uninteresting because he's just so strong.
But that's the thing. That's the reason why I don't want him on the table, is that the whole thing of he's so cunning and mysterious and he's 85 steps ahead of you playing 17-dimensional chess type of thing. If you never see the person on the table, if you never see them, I'm using finger quotes, in person, that's what their story would sound like. Yep. It sounds like this legend of a slave who rose and did all these things. What if he's just a guy who's really good at self-promotion and wasn't actually a slave to begin with? Yeah. But it's like that adds to his mystique, and, is the narrative that he was a slave and rose to power? Is that something that he wants to use to have slaves keep other nobility in check, so they're having to worry about a rebellion from below? What if he was just a noble the whole time? I mean, there's nothing that hints at that, but I think it just points to the fact that I don't want him develop more. I mean, you would, if there was this thing that nobody ever saw, they would have this sort of like legendary godlike boogeyman thing, and I want him to keep that. And I just, no, that said, if they made a model, would I buy it and paint it? You're damn right I would. But
yes, you would. Yeah. Well, and what the thing with Vect is he has a million clones. And so if you kill Vect, you're not really killing Vect. So, I mean, there's ways around it, but you're right. How do you represent that cunning on the tabletop and make it something that's interesting and not just a guy with really good stats? There isn't a really easy way to do that. For sure. Yeah. So. Yeah, and I guess the other named character, I think the Duke was always super cool because he was an Archon, but he was also a bit of a Corsair as well. He kind of took the line there. There's a lot of cool characters they could explore, and like you said, Lady Malice. But I don't know. I mean, Dark Eldar are rife for exploring more, but right now as an army, I mean, they are popular among certain players, but there are lots of people that just Dark Eldar are just not their thing. Yeah. They're not an army like Space Marines where everyone can kind of go, okay, Space Marines are kind of cool. They're sci-fi soldier types. Dark Eldar have a real strong background and flavor that doesn't appeal to everybody.
Yeah, and I think also too is just they haven't had that new mini splash. Yeah. I think if they'd because they have quite a few units that are in Finecast. Yeah. I don't know if they have any metal ones, but like Incubi, those redone would be amazing. Yeah, yeah. Mandrakes redone would be amazing. Yeah, now that Mandrakes don't suck anymore, I want them, but I'm like, I don't want Finecast. I'm not paying money for that, So that's what's preventing me from having, 2 or 3 units of them, just having the 5 that I bought when they were first released because I like the look of them. Yeah. But, and maybe even getting a new unit, because that's one thing. If I could add anything to this army, modern 40K armies, which I always consider Death Guard to be, the first modern 40K army, where you have, these elite slots that can get filled up by buff characters. Yeah. And Drukhari really don't have those. I mean, they have HQs that can do things. I guess you can argue like a Beast Master can buff packs and things like that, but they don't have these just like one-man assassin type things, and I think that's how they could bring back Trueborn, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Because Trueborn left, there was a really weak argument, about, well, we don't make a kit for it, so we're going to take it out of the Codex, and it's like, well, you just make it out of other stuff. Well, we don't want players to have to make conversions, and you're like, okay, well, where's the conscript kit? Yeah. It's just, so that was a little bit weak, but in the end, I didn't argue with the Trueborn thing getting taken out because it really was just this generic stamped unit choice. Oh, it's an elite unit with more access to special weapons, higher leadership, and an extra attack.
Yeah.
Am I talking about Stern Guard? Am I talking about Chosen? Am I talking, you can fill in the blank with a million units. And so I was okay with them leaving, but I could see them bringing back like a Trueborn character, or even bring in like cheaper HQs like a Dracon or something like that. Because if you're playing a Cabal battalion and you want to use obsessions, you're stuck with either taking Drazar and an Archon, or taking 2 Archons, and that just feels weird.
Yep.
And I'd like to see, even though, again, this is like, I'm complaining about not having a cheap HQ when everything in this army is cheap. I'd like to see like a lower, like a Dracon. I'd like to see a Dracon brought
You need
back.
a different HQ. I mean, that is the one issue with if you're running a battalion of a Cabal. You have to have 2 Archons, which feels weird. They don't have that, or running Drazar. So, Dark Eldar, they lost a lot of named characters. They also lost the Trueborn, and the Trueborn, we should point out, are the ones that are they're Dark Eldar, the rare ones that are actually born in the normal reproductive cycle, not vat grown. So they have a certain status among the Dark Eldar society. But actually, you think about it, even though this codex has got a lot of good stuff, there's a lot of units that were kind of lost along the way that they could easily bring back.
Well, and like Blood Brides were lost, but Blood Brides I wasn't taking Blood Brides before.
Yeah.
When they went away, I was like, when Trueborn were lost, I just looked at those blasters and went, I can distribute those to other units and repaint the unit markings, and we're good to go again. And I don't miss it. And I'm one of those guys that, and it's funny, like, it's being like being kind of being a history teacher and a old codger who's been playing since Rogue Trader days. I was one of the first people, even in my group, which tends to be a little more narrative driven, people are still taking index units. Yeah. And I won't do it. I don't like it. The index units are just, if there's a 9th edition and it rolls around, I think once all the codexes are gone, or all the codexes are filled out completely, I think eventually they're going to have to just rip. I feel like they've needed to rip the Band-Aid off for 2 years and they haven't done it. Yeah. Yeah. But they will eventually. You assume that they will. It's best to be ahead of the curve. Yes. Like that, yeah. Yes. So I guess you have a successful podcast. You've been talking about Dark Eldar for a long time, and you're plugged into the community. What is it about Dark Eldar what is it about Drukhari that appeals to players? Like, what is it about them that is the most appealing? They fill a really 5th edition. They were more of like the weird exception army. First came out, so they have interesting mechanics. Power from Pain is a different type of mechanic. I mean, I guess you could say like, Canticles of the Omnisaw would be something similar, where you get like army-wide bonuses, but they get these ones that stack as they go along. Yeah. I think it's really that if that background and play style of these fast, arrogant raiders with tons of firepower, tons of speed. Yeah. They like you were mentioning earlier, they translate really well to the table. There's enough variety there that you don't get bored. It's not like I'm going to paint, what's the difference between painting a Devastator and an Intercessor? Yeah. Not much. Yeah. Like you have enough color palette changes as a hobbyist. They're really rewarding. If you get bored painting, Kabalite units, you can switch over and do some Coven stuff. And now you have a lot of like flesh textures to work with. And then you can go to witches and do a different thing and find a way to tie all 3 of those together visually. It's almost like Astra Militarum on steroids, where there are so many options. You can take the army in so many different directions and really explore it. And they all work, and they're all an interesting challenge to play. It'd be interesting. I think a newer player would have a different take on it. But for me, I started playing them like mid 3rd edition because people said they weren't any good. Okay. They're like, everybody else is getting codexes. And I just have that contrarian gene where I'm like, oh yeah, like hold my beer, and I fell in love playing with them because I like an army I like aggressive armies. I like fast armies, but I also like armies that have flaws in them. Yeah. And the whole they're very high risk, very high reward. Yeah. And from a hobby standpoint, they're beautiful and brilliant.
Yeah.
And now that the rules actually match the background and lore, which I think is really interesting and I've loved for a long time, I think that's why they play. And even though they're 5th edition for the most part, I mean, except for what Drazar, I think is still a 3rd edition model. They're 5th edition ones, but they're still from that era of plastics where this was where, like you were mentioning, they were hitting their stride with plastics. And this is before they went to, now I love these new complex poses and things that they're doing, but the models are so monopose. So this was when you were still dealing with that Jess Goodwin designed modular thing where I can take, you have a flat shouldered, joint at the torso. I can put witch arms on a Kabalite. I can do, a number of things and it still works.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just that perfect combination of they play interesting. They play a little bit different with like poison weapons and their power from pain and they fit the lore. To me, they're just a total package army.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think though that, I mean, so we talked about like the hobbying aspect of it is just amazing with these guys. The way they play is fast aggressive and, they are the glass hammer. They've always been considered a glass hammer army.
Yeah.
Although surprisingly, they're not. They're more durable now. They feel a lot more durable, anyways, with night shields and of things of that nature.
Yeah.
But do you think the lore? I mean, because they are, we talked about evil being kind of relative, but they are a dark, literally, army. Do you think it kind of turns people off, or do you think that there's the players that want to play, like, for example, if I'm going to play a role-playing game, there's some players that want to explore the evil character. They like to go that route because it's interesting, and it's not anything about them personally. It's just, I like this side because I want to explore I want to be the bad guy for once. I want to be the person who's the bad guy.
They want to try out being the hot topic emo kid for a little bit. Maybe, and that's the thing is that I don't know. I mean, it's, if you look at like somebody who just views the game as a tournament player, all these things are just going to be chess pieces to them.
Yeah, exactly.
The evil part of it isn't going to really go its way with that.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, for me, I always just view, I love ethics and I love the whole idea that, ethics are pretty relative when it comes to things. And so for me, it never was just the, they're evil and it was more just that to me, it was the look of the even the old 3rd edition models. Like I will briefly give them their due. Like, there's some Gary Morley sculpts in there that are by today's standards awful, but we have to remember they were very much a late 2nd edition army. And when you look at the sculpts, they're a late 2nd edition army. And so they got some of the early decent plastics, like late 2nd edition, you see Vipers, you see Falcons, which the lines on those still kind of hold up today.
Oh yeah.
The Raiders were, that was a whole brand new thing that they were trying to do, a whole new idea, and for the time they were really good. And at the time, that was what drew me to the army. Was the models were good, they were fun, and not a lot of people are playing them. So I think for some people like me, that is one of the motivating factors, is the fact that they're just not, well, I was going to say they aren't just a, cookie cutter thing, but then you do have the, basic, battalion is people will just like straight up write it into their list, where it's like, okay, we've got an Archon, a Thread of the Living Muse, Cabal the Blackheart, and 3 Ravagers with Disintegrators.
Yep.
But I mean, you do have that part of it, but for the most part, they had been a hard mode army for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think for some players, that's actually appealing.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. All right, Brian, thank you so much for talking Drukhari with us. We appreciate it, and we will see you at the Boise Cup this year.
Yes, you will.
All right. All right, talk to you later. All right, so that was Brian, and hopefully you learned all you need to know about the history of Dark Eldar, both in the game and also just their lore in general. I think Dark Eldar really are... there's always like who's good and who's evil in 40K, and the answer to that, there's no real good race in 40K. But if there's such a thing,
a few evil ones.
If there's such a thing as an evil race, Dark Eldar are an evil race.
It's Dark Eldar.
Yeah,
it is Dark Eldar are the evilest of the evils.
Totally.
All the evil.
Yeah, because they're not doing things for power. They're doing literally things for pain. They're literally trying to hurt you because that's how it feeds them. So. They are the evil race. And if you like playing the villain, Dark Eldar are it. And they're not just evil, they're creepy, sort of really, really hyper-intelligent, sophisticated evil, which is much more interesting than just, I don't know, Corn Berserker, which is interesting in its own way, but I kind of like the way the Dark Eldar do it a little bit.
Well, the Corn Berserker will just kill you.
Yeah.
Right? The Dark Eldar Archon will capture you.
Yep.
And he will. They have these spells that they put on you to like just leave you like in eternal agony.
Yeah.
Forever. And so because you being tortured until the end of eternity gives them strength to keep living. It fends off she who thirsts.
Yep. Pretty much. Now, the thing is, we have mentioned before that the Dark Eldar Codex is one of the best codexes. And not so much that from a pure power standpoint, although it does have that, just from a interest standpoint, it is a really interesting codex. They did a really good job of building this thing. And if you are a pure codex player, Dark Eldar offer quite a bit. And the reason why I think is because there's really 3 factions in the Dark Eldar codex. They took the Dark Eldar and broke it into 3. You have Kabals, you have Witch Cults, and you have homunculus Covens. To gain the obsession benefits of a particular detachment, you have to have kind of a pure Cabal cult or a Coven.
Yep.
Now, the cool thing is if you really want to play, really lore-based, you take the 3 detachment limit, you could take a detachment of each one of those. Or you could take maybe 2 detachments of another one, or however you want to work it out. But the cool thing is with Dark Eldar, they're really going all in on the idea of Cabal, Witch Cult, and Coven as being separate. Not only that, they have separate obsessions, separate traits, separate stratagems, which we'll cover.
Yep.
And you're always usually going to take a pure detachment because you want the benefits that go with it.
Well, and they also have access to the mercenaries, the mandrakes, the incubi.
Yep.
And
Scourges.
the scourge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they kind of took the ones that don't fit and made them mercenaries that don't. Yeah. So they don't restrict you from taking those items.
Yeah.
So,
they don't break bonuses, but they don't benefit from the detachment bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Kabals they have Archons and they have Warriors and they have a lot of vehicles, Ravagers and then Flyers. They're kind of more the shooting-focused version of Dark Eldar.
They're the Venoms. Yeah,
Yep.
they more often use the Venoms because they're more shooting focused.
Yep.
They use the Razor Wings. They use the Raiders. Raiders are really big.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Raiders are really big. The Tantalus. The
The
Tantalus is really big.
It's a classic.
Quite literally really big.
Yeah.
It is
It's a
quite
pretty
really
large
big.
model.
Yeah. And you lost a part of your soul building that thing, I think.
Oh my gosh, you guys! Any hint of how bad it is. I mean, I know everybody has horror stories about building, large resin models like that. It is so bad that Forge World had to contract out for metal pieces to be made to insert into that model, so that you could form the resin around these metal pieces because that's how bad it is. Yeah,
Yeah. It's bad.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It is.
Oh, it's a gorgeous model.
Yep.
They like the Tantalus.
And then Ravagers, too.
Everybody likes Ravagers. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Right. So that's the Cabal. Then you have the cults, the witch cults, and they're more melee focused for the most part. You have the witches as troops. You have the succubus, or succubi, I suppose.
Succubi.
Yep.
And Hellions and Reaver jet bikes, which you don't see as much anymore, sadly. But for the most part, you see witches.
When you could run them as Yanari, when you were able to run those guys as Yanari and be able to move them right after they deep struck, Hellions were like, they were amazing.
Gross.
Yeah.
Because you could drop them down and then move them.
Yeah.
And then just here's like 40 poison shots and all of them. Here's all my Green Goblin attacks coming in. They were very good. But
no, not so much.
Not so much.
And then you have the Covens, which are the Homunculus, Rax, Talos, and Grotesques, and they are not necessarily shooting or melee. They're really just tough. Yeah. They have a little bit of both, but they're mostly tough. Yeah. So they're tough elves, and that's the Coven unit. So really the idea behind splitting them into 3, there are 3 different play styles. I mean, you could go all in and do one or the other. Oftentimes you have detachments of each. Yeah. So,
well, they really went to the extra mile to kind of show like that these guys don't get access, are not a shooting element of the Dark Eldar army. The Coven don't get access to the Flyers.
No. Yep.
They don't get access to Ravagers.
Nope.
They get access to Venoms.
Yeah.
And
Raiders.
And Raiders.
Yeah.
And the Tantalus. But other than that, like sorry boys.
No.
Although they might get access to the Reaper. It's the Forge World. The Forge World gunboat. They might get access to that. I forget.
Yeah.
I think they do actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you have
Forge World.
Yeah,
oh, silly Forge
how they do
World.
it.
So consistent.
So then you have mercenaries that kind of round out Incubi, Scourges, and Mandrakes for the most part. Now, the Dark Eldar general rules, they have what's called Power from Pain. And they used to have a much more complicated system for this, but Power from Pain is actually really, really pretty elegant now.
Yep.
Basically, depending on the battle round, you get certain benefits. If you have the Power from Pain keyword, which I think almost the unit will have a Power from Pain listed, whether it has that or not. And a lot of them do. Most of them do, actually.
Yes, they do.
The first one is Inured to Suffering. On a 6, the model does not lose a wound. So it is a 6-up ignore a wound, which is always good. It's essentially Ulthway have to use a chapter tactic or a craft world trait to get that. So first round, they get 6-up ignore wound. Second round, you can reroll dice when determining how far it advances or charges. So rerolling is really good, especially if you have a melee-focused army. So round 2 rolls around, and you can start rerolling. So if you're dropping or deep striking or webway striking, I suppose, something in round 2, it's automatically rerolling as charges, which is nice.
Which is really useful when it's rerolling both, because what you can do if you really need to get that charge off.
Yeah.
If you roll pretty well, like on 1, like let's say you roll a 6 and a 1, then you just re-roll the 1 with the CP.
Yeah.
But let's say that you roll like a 3.
Yeah.
You can re-roll them both. Or alternatively, let's say you roll like a 4 and a 4.
Yeah.
And you need a 9.
You need a 9,
You re-roll one of the 4s, you get another 4.
Yeah.
Well, you re-rolled it with your CP strat. Now you use your re-roll on the charge distance, re-roll the other one.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah. And then round 3, Flensing Fury, add one of the hit rolls made for units with this bonus in the fight phase. And so if you're running Coven, by now, your Grotz and your Talus are in combat, typically, by turn 3. If you haven't lost them, typically you haven't because they're really tough. Round 4 is Auto Pass Morale, which is really nice when you got those units sitting on an objective somewhere and they start to get picked off. Unit of Warriors, I've got one guy left and he's fearless. So there you go. And then Unit 5 on, Battle Round on, you subtract 1 from leadership for enemy units that are within 6 inches, and honestly, this is probably the weakest.
And I'm glad they put it as the last one.
It's the last one. Yeah. Because if it was the first one, you'd be like, lame. So really? Power from Pain is actually really, really important.
It's very good.
And a Dark Eldar player, you have to know exactly kind of what turn it is. Which cults get combat drugs, which I love combat drugs. Basically, they are chemical stimulants, are used to heighten combat performance despite the risk of deadly and spectacular overdose. So these are basically steroids on steroids that you can take.
Adrenaline added and some amphetamine.
And so you basically take a unit and you can do +1 attack, +1 strength, +2 to move, +1 toughness, +1 weapon skill, +2 to leadership. I've never seen leadership ever taken unless you have 6 units and you want to double up on 1. But for the most part, which cult, you're usually going to take strength or attack, maybe move. But combat drugs are only witch only because they're the gladiatorial arena types and they have combat.
Succubag get them as well.
Did you
are witches.
Did you see what the name of the +2 leadership one is?
Splintermind.
Yeah, they named a podcast after the lamest combat drug. Wah, wah.
Sorry, Brian. And then, the basic weapons of Dark Eldar, they have Splinter Weapons. And Splinter Weapons, you have a both love and hate relationship with them because essentially they auto-wound. If it's a vehicle, it's a 6, but they wound everything else on a 4. That's great if you're shooting at like a Wraith Knight, or
Morty.
Or
Magnus.
Yes. Poison killing Morty is hilarious.
Yeah. If you're shooting at, I don't know, Guardsmen, feels bad.
Yes.
It feels
Yes, it does.
bad. You're actually wounding them less than if you were shooting with like a bolter or something. So Splinter Weapons are wounding on 4s is both giveth and taketh away.
Yes.
So it's kind of a mixture. I don't think you go all in on you take Splinter to take the Splinter, but you want to mix it because you can't just rely on them because they're just not efficient to shoot at everything with Splinter Weapons.
No.
So they have blasters, which are really good. They're strength 8.
Strength 8, neg 3.
4.
Neg 4 because they're melta shot.
And they're
without the melta rule.
Without the melta rule.
Yeah.
They're 18-inch range.
Yeah.
I mean,
and a blaster's really, really nice for anti-vehicle. They have disintegrator cannons, which are that's so good.
They're really good.
So good.
Strength 5, AP 3, 2 damage, 3 shots.
Yeah, AP
Very,
3
very good.
is just good. Now, when you could take Doom, cast it on a target, and use disintegrators against it, they were better, but they're still pretty darn good.
Yeah.
You have Dark Lances, which are just like Bright Lances, which are strength 8 minus 3.
-4.
Minus 4, sorry, D6. Jeez, I'm screwing them all up. Just like Bright Lances, yeah. D6 damage. And then you have Shredders, which you don't see as often, but Shredders are really good against infantry, especially Scourges with Shredders.
Yeah, you used to see.
Yeah, the problem is that they're really short range. Is the thing.
Shredders, yeah,
and the things that can take them are very squishy.
Yeah.
So you have to drop in very squishy things very, very close to the thing you want to kill, and it can be kind of a problem.
Yeah, but Assault D6, granted, D6 shot weapon's always rough, but Assault D6, Strength 6, -1 damage, rerolling wounds against a unit of guard. You don't want to shoot your Splinter Weapons at them, but a Shredder, on the other hand...
Yeah, winning on 2s, rerolling 1s is...
Yeah,
beautiful.
We'll do it. So if you look at the spread of weapons here, they have a very nice diverse range to attack pretty much anything, really.
They also have Haywire.
And Haywire, yes.
They have Haywire blasters that are, I mean, they're D3 shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're D3 shots because they don't have Haywire cannons. And they, you know, they can wreck vehicles pretty quickly. And the Haywire blasters are cheap. They're like 8 points.
You see them on Talos. Talos will go blap to vehicles and do just D3 mortals, blink mortals, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then finally, they have Night Shields now, and almost actually all their vehicles have a 5-up invul.
Yep.
Which is kind of nice.
5-up invul to shooting.
To shooting.
Yes. It is shooting only.
It's important to point that out. 5-up invul to shooting. But that makes them survivable because their toughness is a lot lower than your typical vehicles. You go, what's your toughness? What's the toughness on a Razor Wing?
6.
A 6, yeah, that's low. That's real low. And a Venom is 5?
5.
Which is really... But a 5-up invul makes it nice, and a Venom has a -1 to hit.
Yeah,
too,
so. The Flyers and the Venoms are carrying -1, so a -1 5+ invulnerable makes them tougher than you would think for their points.
Especially if you take 9 of them.
Especially if they're Cabal of the Blackheart and they get power from pain and they get a 6-up feel no pain.
Yeah.
They are deceptively resilient.
Yeah. You can go after them, but they take up more firepower than you want. Often when you're shooting at one, you're like, ugh. The one thing you thought would kill it, you've got to go to the second, your plan B, and then your priorities get all screwed up at that point.
It's easier for an anti-tank weapon to kill a Rhino than it is to kill a Venom.
Yeah, which is insane, but
that's just how it works.
That's how it works. So those are the general gist of the Eldar, the rules. Let's go through the Cabals now. So the Cabals, we have Cabal the Blackheart, and it is Thirst for Power. Though by far the largest and most influential Cabal, the Blackheart has been taught by Vect to never be satisfied and to rapaciously pursue ever more power. And so, by the way, Cabal the Blackheart is Vex. He is the guy that runs the Dark City. Now, the Cabal Obsession is you treat the Power from Pain ability as having 1 round higher than it actually when determining the bonuses, and units with this obsession do not have the Power from Pain that do not have Power from Pain ability instead gain the Inert to Suffering bonus. So that means essentially the vehicles typically that don't have Power from Pain will get a 6-up Ignore Wounds.
Yeah, which 6 no pain is nice.
Really, really helpful for Ravagers and Venoms and Flyers, essentially. Yeah. Okay, so what is their stratagem?
Vex Veto.
Yes.
What? I don't know. I don't know what's.
Don't even use that one.
What is this stratagem? I've never heard of it.
Agents of the Black Heart.
It's an obscure strat.
Vex Veto. You'll never hear it called anything. Oh, sorry. It's Agents of Vect.
Yeah, Agents of Vect.
Yep. Not Agents of the Black Heart.
Yep.
So when you use it, you roll a die.
Yep.
On a 1, it does not go off. On a 2 through 5, your opponent's... Oh, sorry. You use it when an opponent uses a stratagem.
Yep.
On a 2 through 5, your opponent's stratagem is canceled and get the points back.
Yep.
On a 6, their stratagem is canceled and they lose the points.
Yeah, which is just feels bad for them, but there you have it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Vex Veto was nerfed to be made more expensive.
A little bit.
Yeah. It used to be 3, and now it's...
Isn't it 4?
It's 4 now.
It's 4.
It's 4.
Which is, I think, fair.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah,
I mean, it determines single matchups.
Yeah,
in a lot of cases. If there's that one stratagem that they need to really make their list work, and you go, no, that can go over there.
Yeah,
suddenly things get really nasty.
It's so powerful that Craftworld Eldar often will take like a flyer wing or a detachment of Cabal the Black Heart just to get Vex, to get Vex Veto or Agents of Vex.
Yep.
That's how powerful it is.
Yes, and the requirement for Vex Veto, these have been added, is that you have to have a Cabal of the Blackheart detachment, and you have to have a Cabal of the Blackheart model on the table to use it.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
It was a stratagem that really changed the game when it came out. I mean, because there were lists everywhere that were written around, one or two different stratagems.
Yeah. A lot of chaos lists for sure. Yeah.
A lot of chaos lists, and if you would shut them down, the wheels just kind of came off their whole lists.
Yep.
It was.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to a big event and you have to know that you will have a stratagem, you will probably run into a Dark Eldar player who can shut at least one of your strats down, maybe two, depending on how much CP they have. So, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, what's their Warlord trait?
So, their Warlord trait is Labyrinthine Cunning.
Which is also good.
It is very good. It is probably one of the better CP regen abilities in the game because the way that it is worded, it works on both yours and your opponent's. So, and it's on every command point that is spent. So if you vect somebody, if you use Agents of Vect on somebody, the official title, you get to roll 3 dice and,
4 dice, really.
4 dice, because you get to roll 4 dice and you get a command point. We'll get a command point back.
So here's the funny thing. So if your opponent is using a House Raven strat, the Order of Companions to reroll ones, that is a 3 CP.
3.
And you Agents of Vect that's 4. You're rolling 7 dice.
And you're getting a command point back.
You're going to get a command point back on average there. Very good Warlord trait, and it pairs with their very good relic, which is the Writ of the Living Muse.
Oh, so good.
As I used to run Triple Ravager with an Archon with a Writ of Living Muse, and it's a machine. It's a poem. Apparently, it's a very good poem because that poem lets all Cabal of the Blackheart units within 6 inches reroll 1s to wound.
Yeah.
So an Archon becomes both a lieutenant and a captain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And by the way, that Archon has a 2-up invul.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's probably running around with a blaster and
Phantasm grenade launcher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phantasm grenade launcher and a Venom blade. It's a great relic. Writ of the Living Muse, the most powerful poem in the galaxy.
Yep, for sure.
Knowing Dark Eldar is probably Vorgon poetry, and they read it.
That's way too highbrow for me. I don't know. That could be way too highbrow for this audience. I don't get it.
There's some Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy readers out there. I know it.
All right, next Cabal. By the way, Cabal the Blackheart. If it sounds like we're saying that they have probably the best combination of relic, trait, and stratagem, and even their obsession bonus, it's because they are. They literally you see Cabal the Blackheart often. It's really, really, really powerful. So. And if there is a weakness to the Dark Eldar Codex, it is that there are some real head and choices you make when it comes to Cabals, and then also Coven, which we'll get to here in a minute. So, Cabal of the Flayed Skull. The Cabalites of the Flayed Skull excel in aerial warfare, using their speed and maneuverability to harry the most elusive targets. So, you add 3 inches to the move characteristics of all models with this obsession that can fly. So, obviously, Venoms and Raiders and such, usually Venoms. And in addition, enemy units do not receive the benefit for being in cover against attacks made by models with the obsession that can fly.
Yep.
And that or that are embarked upon a transport that can fly. So basically everything in a Venom is you get no cover against them.
Yeah.
And also you reroll 1s for such models when attacking with rapid fire weapons.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of nice because the warriors inside of Venom are actually rerolling 1s against with their rapid fire splinter weapons. So
the vehicles, the Venoms, their splinter cannons and splitter rifles are rapid fire as well.
Oh, they are, yeah. So everything is rerolling 1s.
So this works really well with Venom spam.
Yeah. So if you're running a lot of Venoms, there you go.
Gunboat.
It's a gunboat. Yeah. And Venoms are super cool. And as we talked about, we will talk about more. They're surprisingly durable. All right. So what's the stratagem for the Flayed Skull?
The Flayed Skull strat is Masters of the Shadowed Sky. Pretty much like, hey, this is our airspace. Get out of it.
Yeah.
Use this stratagem when you select a Cabal of the Flayed Skull unit to shoot with in the shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to hit rolls made for this unit's attack that target units that can fly. Bring it down. They shoot down in the other aircraft.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay.
Warlord trait, Famed Savagery. Increase the Warlord's strength and attack characteristic by 1 during any turn in which they were charged. They charged, were charged, or made a heroic intervention. So they become a Strength 4 elf. Woo!
Yeah, that was a little...
It's kind of interesting because some of the I mean, the things that you'd be charging with would be like, I don't know, an Archon that has a Venom Blade that wounds on 2s anyways.
Yeah, that's poison.
Yeah. I suppose if you gave him a relic like the Jin Blade, the Jin or the Jin Blade, it's a little tougher. It could make a little more sense. But I don't. The beat stick Archon in combat, you could do that, but it's.
You don't really want
It's more
there.
you're doing it for fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
The relic is the Obsidian Veil. It's for Archons only. The first time this model fails its invulnerable save, which is a 2-up, and its shadow field ceases to function, it immediately gains a 4+ invul save for the remainder of the battle. Not bad.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Especially if you have an Archon, if you have these gunboats, these Venoms are going into, they're moving up quick, they're firing a lot of shots. If you have an Archon, you want to kind of mix it up a little bit as a melee threat. That makes sense to go there. Flayed Skull is kind of the second one you see a lot of, especially if people are running, like I said, a lot of Venoms. All right, next Cabal. Cabal of the Poison Tongue. The Toxin Crafters of the Cabal of the Poison Tongue tailor their venoms to the targets of a raid, ensuring they have the most gruesome effect on their victims' physiologies. So, they reroll wound rolls of 1 for melee weapons and poison weapons used by models with this obsession. This does not apply to artifacts of cruelty or the relics. For the purpose of this obsession, a poison weapon is any weapon with a poison weapon ability. So essentially, they're rerolling 1s for poison weapons. That's literally it. And I don't know, it feels okay, I suppose, if you're using a lot of splinter weapons, but I think splinter weapons you don't really want to be inefficient with those things.
Yeah,
so
they're the nice like cherry on top. A lot of the times, you know, you're firing splinter. I mean, they do work against a lot of targets, but a lot of times, like you're firing the big weapons, and you're like, and I guess the splinter rifles go, right, like that kind of stuff. So having a trait specifically about just that feels like, their strat though is incredibly good.
Yeah, strat.
Insidious Misdirection, 2 CP. Use the stratagem at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn has begun. Okay, you know who's going first. You're just about to start, moving models. Pick up the 3 Cabal of the Poison Tongue units from your army that are on the battlefield. Immediately remove those units from the battlefield and then set them up again as described in the deployment section of your mission. If you redeploy a transport, all units stay inside. You can only use the stratagem once per battle, of course, but it's a redeploy. A 2 CP redeploy.
There you go. Yeah,
very worth.
Eldar have that as well, although it's not linked to a craft world. But
you know, that's Eldar.
Redeploy is good.
So it is the Warlord trait is Towering Arrogance. Very, very dark Eldar.
Yeah, classic.
Friendly Cabal, the Poison Tongue units can use the Warlord's leadership while they're within 12 inches of them.
You're not going to be taking units large enough for that to really matter. Most of your warrior units are going to be 5 guys.
Yeah, 5 guys in a Venom. Or a Raider, actually. I can see Raiders with this guys. Anyways,
2 units of 5 in the same Raider.
Yeah.
That's typically what
you're right. You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
So their relic is the Soul Seeker. It's a pistol that replaces the Splinter pistol on an Archon only. And it is 2 shots, neg 1, D3 damage. It adds 2 to it. So it's a poison weapon that wounds on a 2-up unless it's a vehicle. And it can target enemy characters. And it's 18-inch range. That's not bad.
No. That's not bad.
GW loves their sniper pistols.
Yeah, but it's not, what's the AP on it?
Neg 1.
That's not bad.
And then it ignores cover.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's not bad. So, Poison Tongue. Yeah, I don't know. Raiders with the Splinter Racks, maybe.
I feel like you're better off doing Flayed Skull at that point.
Yeah, that's the problem. Flayed Skull and Poison Tongue kind of.
Or Obsidian Rose, which we...
Yeah, let's go with Obsidian Rose.
I like Obsidian Rose.
Every weapon produced in the workshops of the Cabal of the Obsidian Rose is a masterpiece, equal in accuracy and lethality to the finest armaments of other Cabals. So the range characteristics of all assault, rapid fire, and heavy weapons by units of this obsession is increased by 6. That does not apply to eye bursts or artifacts of cruelty. Eye bursts are what the Medusa have, which used to be super powerful. Now they're just, they're okay. Yeah. So anyways, 6-inch extending of range is always a pretty good thing. And especially if you're kind of more dancing outside of edges of stuff, the Obsidian Rose makes sense. So what's the strat?
The Obsidian Rose strat is... Failure is not an option. You use it when a Cabal of the Obsidian Rose unit from your army fails a morale test. Select which models will flee, but before removing them, each can shoot as if it were the shooting phase or make a single close combat attack as if it were the fight phase. If any enemy models are slain by these attacks, none of the models flee from your unit. If no enemy models were slain, the fleeing models are removed as normal. It's a 1 CP strat. It ain't that great.
No.
But it's like...
Because you're just not going to have things big enough to...
You know?
Yeah, and I think
you're not going to be failing leadership all that much.
No, not really.
No, the big thing for me with Obsidian Rose is that trait.
Yeah.
Because if you're playing a Hornet style, kind of like I spread out through the table, I mean, playing the engagement range, 24-inch blasters drive me nuts.
Yeah.
Getting shot with blasters from 24 inches out, rerolling ones to hit because
that's nasty with those weapons. Yeah. All right. What's the trait?
So, Deathly Perfectionist, increased damage characteristics of weapons other than artifacts of cruelty used by the Warlord by 1. So, if your Archon has a blaster, it does D6 plus 1 damage.
Ooh,
it's nothing to scoff at.
Yeah.
Their relic is the Armor of Misery. Archon only. There's a trend here.
Yep.
The wearer has a 3+ save characteristic. In addition, subtract 1 from hit rolls that attack this target when in the fight phase. So, egg 1 to hit in the fight phase and a power armor save. Better than their 5-up.
Yep.
Their natural 5-up that they get.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It allows you to throw like small arms fire or, like guardsmen swinging shovels at you onto the power armor and not risk rolling a 1 against a low quality attack and losing your shadow field.
Yeah. It feels like Obsidian Rose is kind of almost a sleeper. You don't see it a lot, but it could be really good, especially the range. You're right. 24-inch blasters. As soon as you said that, I'm like,
Our local Drukhari player plays Obsidian Rose the most, and we've scrimmed against each other so many times. I hate those weapons. 42-inch Disseys.
Yeah.
42-inch disintegrator cannons are also really annoying. That's hard to chase down.
And they have the speed to kind of maintain that range band. Yeah, for sure. Cool. So the one problem with the Cabals is that there is not a named Archon character. So if you take a detachment, you can't really take 2 battalions of Cabals unless you take Drazar as your 4th HQ. So often you'll take a single battalion of a Cabal and often maybe an air wing of something else because their flyers are pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, I think you could do. It's not a bad idea to take a Cabal the Black Heart flyer wing, and then like a Flayed Skull Venom, or an Obsidian Rose Venom kind of thing if you really want to go 2 different Cabals there. So cool. Those are the Cabals. And then we go to Witches. And when this codex came out, witches, you didn't see them. I mean, you kind of saw them, and I feel like there's just enough. There's stuff there that we're still discovering how good witches can be. Because there are a lot of people taking just like full on tons of witches, and they're actually doing pretty well with them.
Yeah,
so,
with meta changes as well.
Yeah,
I think as the meta has rolled around towards like, we have a ton of bodies.
Yeah,
and these bodies kind of want to be close to you. Witches go. Okay.
Yeah, and
come on.
And witches have this Shardnet, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
so we'll talk about that.
We love you so much. We're going to keep you right here.
We're going to keep you right there. All right, Cult of Strife. Whether enthralling spectators in the arena or slaughtering their way through an enemy army, the Cult of Strife have developed a penchant for bombastically violent opening maneuvers. So, increase the attacks characteristics of models with this obsession by 1 during any turn in which they charged, were charged, or made a heroic intervention. Cult of Strife +1 attack is pretty darn good. There's there's not a whole lot there. It's good.
Yep.
Right.
And then you add the combat drug on top of that, where they get +1 attack from their combat drug.
Oof.
Oh yeah,
and they are they are just blenders.
Yeah,
and then you combine that with the strat.
Yep.
Right. So you're throwing out all these attacks. Now this is an expensive fight again.
Yeah,
it really is. But it's also has a combination with that.
But
3
fight
CP.
against warm everyone's heart. Everyone loves
does.
to fight
it
against.
Does. So it's a 3 CP, and the name is very long. No method of death beyond our grasp. Say that every time you activate it.
Yeah.
Okay, use the stratagem just after a Cult of Strife unit from your army has destroyed an enemy unit in either the shooting or fight phase. If used in the fight phase, use the stratagem after the attacking unit has consolidated. So you get to pile in, fight, consolidate, then you trigger it. If you killed them in the shooting phase, you get to shoot again.
Yeah.
If you killed them in the fight phase, you get to fight again.
Oh, nice.
When you're throwing out 5 attacks per witch,
yeah,
you're going to kill your first target.
Yeah.
And then you get to pile in and you go, okay, now I get to fight again.
Yeah, so you kill the junk in front, and if you've got enough, as long as there's enough,
as long as you were able
distance,
to declare a charge target on what's behind.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. You don't need to get there, but they have to be, if you've charged, they have to be a target of the charge. Now, if you were already locked up, which you have shard nets, you very well could have been, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You pile in, you fight to, or, choose to fight, pile in.
Yeah.
And kill whatever you want to kill.
There you go. Nice. All right. Cult of Strife. What's their,
The Warlord trait is called Blood Dancer, which is, I'd like to think that's the original title of Elton John's Tiny Dancer.
Yes, for sure.
But, I don't know. That's just rumor. Each time you roll a hit roll of 6+ for this Warlord in the fight phase, that hit scores 3 hits instead of 1. Ooh. So it's not even just 2. It's 3.
A succubus with 3.
And this book was written in a time because we've gotten used to them saying unmodified rolls, right?
Yeah.
Well, it says a roll of 6+. You got to remember what happens with Power from Pain in turn 3.
Yeah.
You get +1 to hit. So that means on 5s, any hit roll of 5 or more, you get 3 hits out of that instead of 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta love that.
And I
Nice.
don't think that was on accident.
No.
Them leaving it as a modified.
So that means
There is nothing in this book that says Dark Eldar have unmodified rolls in it.
Yeah.
That started with the Knight Codex.
Yeah.
That started with the Knight Codex that came out right after the Dark Eldar Codex.
Yeah.
So I think the Dark Eldar kind of are the last ones to really benefit from
the
all of
unmodified.
that, with that unmodified roll thingy. And the bouquet, the word that I can't pronounce, bouquet. It goes on a succubus, only roll a d6 at the start of each battle round to randomly determine a combat drug from the table on page 87. Until the start of the next battle round, that model gains that bonus in addition to any other combat drug bonuses they have, and the duplicates will stack. So you can get double attack, you can +2 attack, so you already have +1 attack. You can get another one. You can get +2 to move.
+2 strength.
+1 to your strength. I mean, it's really good.
Lilith is a cult of strife, right?
Yeah, but Lilith can't take it. She's a named character.
Yeah, but I mean, she's part of the cult of strife. Yeah,
Lilith is.
So we get to the actual name, the first name character for witches is part of cult of strife. So Cult of the Cursed Blade increases strength characteristics of models with this obsession by 1. Okay. In addition, when a unit with this obsession fails a morale test, only 1 model from that unit may flee. This is pretty good if you're running big units of witches.
Because you are going to be, unlike warriors where you're only going to be taking 5, you will be taking large units of witches.
Oh, yeah.
That's very useful.
That's pretty darn nice. Yep. Okay.
And their stratagem, concealed booby traps.
Nice.
1 CP. Use the stratagem when an enemy unit finishes a charge move within 1 inch of the Cult of the Cursed Blade unit from your army that is wholly on or within a terrain feature. Roll a die. On a 4+, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Or 1 CP to do D3 if you're in cover. I mean, it's limited.
Yeah.
It's niche, but when you get to use it, it's hilarious.
You don't have to shine it up. It's not great. I mean, we know that it's not great. It's one of the worst. It's one of the worst ones.
They should have made it like a Tanglefoot grenade. I mean, really, booby traps would have been super cool.
No.
All right, what's your...
Okay, Cult of Cursed Blade. Each time you roll a saving throw of 6 for this warlord in the fight phase, the enemy unit that made the attack suffers a mortal wound after it has resolved all of its attacks. Not bad. So it's like a worse separating plate.
Yeah, bounces mortals back.
It is a worse separating plate, and the relic is the Traitor's Embrace. It's for a succubus. Roll a d6. If the bearer is slain in the fight phase on a 2+, the unit that killed that model suffers d6 mortal wounds after it is finished making all of its attacks.
Yeah. Okay.
Not bad.
If you're going to go suicide bomb a succubus in, this helps.
Yeah. And succubi aren't the worst suicide missiles either. They're like 56 points or something. They're super cheap.
That's the other thing, too, is their characters are cheap.
Yeah.
Really
so
cheap. Yeah.
Unless it's Drazar, and Drazar's awful.
Yeah, he's awful, and he's got a terrible model. So that's
that's sad.
You just said the entire Eldar range. It has a terrible model.
Cult of the Red Grief. Witches of the Cult of the Red Grief revel in high-speed murder, and there is fierce competition amongst their ranks as to who can butcher their victims the quickest. I love these descriptions for Dark Eldar, therefore I must read them all. All right, units with this obsession can charge in the same turn in which they advanced. That's pretty darn good. In addition, you can reroll failed charge rolls for units with this obsession. So they're going to get into charge range. I think if you're going to run, if you really like Reaver bikes, which are not the most competitive choice, but Reaver bikes with Cult of Red Grief make a ton of sense because they have so much distance on them. So.
With Cult of Red Grief and the +2 to move.
Yeah.
They move like 28 inches or something like that on first turn.
Yeah.
And they can really get into your lines and wreck.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
totally.
for sure.
And then their stratagem is Athletic Aerialists. I'm just going to read the description because it'll give you an idea. Witches of the Red Grief set foot on solid ground only for as long as it takes to butcher the enemy. You might guess what they do. Yeah. So use this stratagem just before Cult of the Red Grief infantry unit consolidates. Instead of moving towards the nearest enemy, the unit consolidates up to 6 inches toward the nearest Cult of the Red Grief transport from your army.
I see. Yeah.
If the entire unit is able to end this move within 3 inches of the transport, the unit may immediately embark upon it.
Oh, so they move 6 inches to get to the transport.
Yep, yes.
So
and then
it's
they hop
9-inch
into the transport.
Oh, wow, yeah. So it's a 9-inch range there.
Yeah, as long as every model is within 9 inches of that transport, they hop in it and get the hell out.
Did you guys ever do Chinese fire drills when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah,
you know,
totally.
Where you got a stoplight, You know, you all got out of the car, ran around it, jumped back in, and just sped off.
We were all obnoxious teenagers once.
Yeah, that's the Dark Eldar version of it.
Just imagine if you killed everybody around the car and then got it back in the car and drove off. That's what they do.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's what they do.
Warlord trait?
The Warlord treat's one of the better ones. It adds 1 to your invulnerable save made by the Warlord. Given that Succubi have a 4-up invul naturally, gives them a 3-up invul.
Yeesh.
And their relic is even better.
Yeah.
The Bloodglaive is amazing. Because the big thing about that has kept Succubi, is not being too great is that their glaives that they have are -1 to hit.
Yeah.
That feels bad.
It's a feel bad when you go from hitting on 3s to hitting on 4s.
Yeah,
I mean it's not great.
Or 2s,
or it goes from 2s to 3s.
Yeah.
The Bloodglaive replaces the Archaic Glaive, and it replaces it's +3 strength, -3 AP, and D3 damage, and there's no neg to hit.
Gosh,
Yeah.
+3. So strength 6.
Yep.
Strength 6, you can make it strength 7 if you want to. If you want to add the combat drug. And D3 damage, and they have a boatload of attacks.
Oh, yeah.
It is real good.
I think, the Archons, yes, you could make them melee characters, but I think it's so much more fun to make Succubus melee characters. There's such cool stuff that you can take.
Oh, yeah.
The Triptych Whip is another really cool relic that you can take. There's you could make a Succubus super cool. Super awesome.
And they look really cool, too.
And then they look cool. Yeah. All right.
Red Grief is one of the ones that when the book came out, we were like, oh, this is an easy winner. This is the one that wins. You don't really see it a whole lot, but there's a lot of fun stuff with it. I mean, I've played around and I've played lists where I've had just like a bunch of witches and like a Tantalus that comes up and they get out, fight, and jump back in. And
when you pull that off, you feel like you're
yeah,
the best player
absolutely.
ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
when you pull that off once every 10 games, it feels great. But when
World purchase justified.
when you lose those other 9 games, doesn't feel as great.
Not so much. All right, the Coven, the homunculus Coven obsessions. The first one is Prophets of Flesh, and I'm going to tell you now.
We're gonna start off with that one, huh?
We're going to start with that one. The other two we'll talk about, but the Prophets of Flesh have modified their own bodies and those of their servants to an extraordinary extent. So much so that few weapons their enemies can bring to bear against them can inflict damage greater than that they have already endured. If the model with this obsession, the invulnerable save is conferred by its insensible to pain ability is increased by 4+. So in other words, they have a 4+ invul.
Yes.
Which is really good.
You should be sold.
Yes, right there.
Maybe if you're listening, you should be sold. Rax with a 4+, Talos with 4+.
With a 4+,
Yeah,
because
right?
much of because that insensible to pain is always 5, but now it's 4.
Yep.
An increase in invul save is so freaking good that I'm surprised that this. I mean, it makes sense given kind of what their lore, but man, it's just too good. It's too good.
Really good.
So this is really what a lot of people take the Prophets of Flesh.
Yes,
and also this is Urian's.
Urian
as well.
Urian.
Yep.
And we'll talk about him in a second, but he also he's a good character. He's one of the better homunculus.
Yeah, 8-point, with the homunculus, 8-point toughness 5, 4-up invuln, Rax.
Yeah.
Just don't go places.
No, they're obnoxious to shift.
Yeah, they're really, really valuable.
They don't kill, but they're durable.
They become even better when you hear the stratagem.
Exactly.
Stratagem.
Because even if they are going to go places, or if they get tri-pointed, or they're down to one
rack,
they use, the official name of it is Black Cornucopians. I prefer rack cycle. Rack cycle them.
Yep.
And it is, you pull the unit off the board, 2 CP, okay, use it at the end of your movement phase, pick a unit of Prophets of Flesh racks from your army, remove it from the battlefield, then set it up again at its full starting strength, wholly within the 6 inches of the battlefield and more than 9 inches away from enemy.
How many CP is that again? 2?
It's 2.
2. And so how big can a unit of racks get?
You can only get them to 10.
Yeah.
That's where this thing balances out.
That's the one thing here.
Makes sense.
You can, something that I love watching is, I don't like it when it's used against me, but you use the unit of racks to catch the assault.
Yep.
It's unlikely against a lot of stuff that they're all going to die with their feel no pain and all that kind of stuff. And then if they're tri-pointed, you just yoip and pull them and then deep strike them into the enemy back lines. And hey, look, if it's late enough, I get a reroll to charge because
Right,
so
what's your trait?
The Warlord trait again is the best one. Of the homunculus covens. It's called Diabolical Soothsayer. You choose it and you roll a D3 and you get D3 command points back.
That's always nice.
So
and we'll get into next episode. There's a stratagem that basically you can use this warlord trait to basically get like either a free warlord trait or you get like an extra 1 or 2 command points.
Yep.
The warlord trait also lets you re-roll a hit, a wound, or a save.
Sure.
I believe. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's pretty good. The relic sound like a broken record, but I'm not. It is also the best relic available
to the Coven.
To the Coven. It's called the Vexator Mask.
Oh God!
And there has been, it has required a couple FAQs to clear this thing up because the way it's written is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Homunculus only, Prophets of Flesh, enemy units cannot fire Overwatch at the bearer, which is so good on its
Which, if
own.
that's all it had,
It is so
It
good
would be
by
so good.
itself.
Yeah. There are a lot of relics that's all they do.
Yeah, like Valiant, hey Valiant, with your 3d6 flamer, like
That's cute.
Here's my litlittle homunculus waddle and float in there with this stupid little.
yeah, he's floating in with his 12 arms, like oogly oogly boogly googly googly. Campfire
Targeting computers confused.
yeah. In addition, at the start of each fight phase, select an enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer. That unit cannot fight until all other units that are able to fight have done so. If the unit has an ability that allows it to fight first in the fight phase, it is instead fights as if it did not have the ability. If both players have units that cannot fight, all other units done so, then alternate choosing. Yeah. Those units fight with starting with the player whose turn it is taking place. Okay. So basically what it comes down to is that the Coven player points to a unit and says that unit fights last.
Yeah. Even if that unit charged.
Even if that unit
fights
even
last.
if that unit charged.
Yeah.
And up until recently, not even like CP, like using 2 CP to interrupt.
Yeah.
Could even now do it. But
Yeah.
they've FAQ'd that since. It is still extremely powerful if you use it with like a unit of Talos or a unit of Grotesques.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because they're going to have to get beaten up before they can do anything.
Yeah.
And so you have your nasty combat character and you go, yeah, you're going to go ahead and fight last. Yeah. That makes sense.
Very strong.
All right. So, and that is, again, this one is just super strong. The rest of them, the Dark Creed.
So, I mean, real quick. I mean, we talked about how Blackheart was like by far the most popular Cabal.
Yeah.
You still see the other ones here
Yes.
and there. I played against Poison Tongue. I played against the Obsidian Rose. Played against a lot of Blackheart.
And Flayed Skull. Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever played against Flayed Skull, but you see them.
Yeah.
They're
Yes.
around.
Yes.
Witches, I mean, it varies. You don't play against Witch Cult a ton. With Homunculus Covens, it is always Prophets of the Flesh.
Yep.
You don't see anything else. I have never seen anything else.
If I saw anybody playing anything else, I'd go, I have questions.
Yeah.
Yep. For sure. Absolutely. So then let's talk about the other two.
Covens
real quick. To be completist about it. The Dark Creed. The Coven and the Dark Creed have perfected every method of inducing terrorists to the extent that the mere presence fills the minds of their enemies with nightmarish dread. Right away, you're like, oh no, it's a leadership one. Models and enemy units must subtract 1 for their leadership characteristic for each unit with a succession that is within 6 inches to a maximum of 3. So you go -1 leadership, which is fine if you had something to take advantage of that, but there's not a whole lot of... There's some, but usually it's Craftworld or Harlequins have additional modifiers to stack leadership things.
I think they're intending you to like stack this with Phantasm grenade launchers and stuff like that.
But Phantasms are already
stacking
usually...
leadership debuffs is, unless you have something like, I don't know, Mental Onslaught from the GSC Codex to be like, hey, that really lowered leadership. Now I'm going to really punish
unless you're
you
using
for that.
Mind War, it's
something
just
like
not,
that.
Not
Like
the
it's
same.
just The strat 2 CP. This one's really good.
Yeah.
You're never going to see it because it's actually on a Coven unit.
Yeah.
Use the stratagem when you select a Dark Creed unit to shoot with in the shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, models in that unit can target enemy characters, even if they are not the closest enemy unit.
I want to use this with the Tantalus.
So the Tantalus was something that was laughed about with this. The Reaper was something that was
that's what I was going to point out. The Reaper, doing it with the Reaper.
There is also, apparently in Europe, I was talking to a very prominent European player, and he says that you see every once in a while, you'll see units of 3 Talos with Stinger pods. It's like a D6 anti-infantry weapon.
Oh, okay.
Use this thing.
I just blurp out attacks on like IG characters.
It's
or
like
something?
a 2D6. Like anti-infantry weapon. It's really good.
Oh, it's because there's models in the unit, the entire unit of all
the entire unit, and they can just mow through like. Small like Aramon like dies.
Yeah.
dies instantly like
Okay.
that.
All right. That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Also, I've heard of grotesques with their flamer weapons because grotesque can take flamer weapons. They're really unreliable. They're really unreliable flamer weapons, but they can all just drop down and.
Because you roll the AP on those, right?
Yes.
And so if you roll really high for an AP, then you might want to. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that because of that strat, the Dark Creed, you might see some.
You
some
might
fun.
see them.
All right. Warlord trait and relic.
The Warlord trait is Fear Incarnate. Roll 2d6 for each enemy unit that is within 3 inches of the Warlord at the start of the fight phase. If the result exceeds the highest leadership characteristics of that unit, it suffers a mortal wound.
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
The relic is the Spirit Sting, homunculus with Stinger Pistol only. And Stinger Pistol is something you actually have to buy as an upgrade. So you have to spend points there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 12-inch pistol, 3 shots, poison, wounds on a 2+. It's AP neg 4.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. Okay.
Ooh.
What the? Yeah.
Is there multiple damage?
Yeah, just one.
I guess if you're using a strat, that's not horrible. I guess. All right.
Yeah, and you could turn that into a sniper pistol with their stratagem.
I guess. Yeah.
GW loves their sniper pistol.
They,
Yeah, I just love
They
it.
love their
you
pistol
don't
relic.
realize. I know.
Every book. Every book has a pistol relic. in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Except like Tyranids, because they don't technically have pistols.
and you know they probably tried.
they
to,
probably still have a pistol type weapon. That's a relic in there.
Coven of 12, which I think are cool. I love the idea of the Coven of 12. I don't know why. Its name is cool. The practice of interscene assassinations that exists among the Coven of 12 ensures that weapons and wits are kept razor sharp at all times, and only those members who are master flesh carvers survive long. So improve the armor penetration characteristic of all melee weapons by 1. Yeah, so that's it. Basically, it's just your AP goes up by 1. That's all. And does not apply to artifacts of cruelty. What is your strat?
So their strat is actually pretty useful for a lot of armies. I don't know how useful it is for Dark Eldar, though.
Yeah.
Administer punishment, 1 CP. Use a stratagem when you select a Coven of 12 unit from your army to shoot with in the shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, models in that unit can target enemy units that are within 1 inch of friendly Coven of 12 units. They've been trained in the ways of hostage negotiation.
Yep, nice.
Each time you roll a hit roll of a 1 for each such attack, you hit your own units. If it is instead, resolved against one of your units that's within 1 inch.
Yeah.
For weapons that automatically hit, like those flamers, roll a d6 for each hit. On a 1 to 3, it hits your own units. On a 4+, it hits the enemy unit. So if you really want to remove that try point, you can, go ahead and do the Ball Holland tactic of, we're going to go ahead and kill that unit.
Or you could recycle them with the rest.
Yeah, right. Here's the thing, though. You're playing Coven, not Guard.
Yeah.
Guard really want to be able to shoot into that unit.
Yeah.
Coven are like, you're locked up with our unit. I guess that means we get to charge you. Like, I mean,
they want to be there.
Yeah.
You're getting them out of a spot where they're okay.
Yeah, no, they're fine.
They're fine
like,
being
hey,
there.
I like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, don't light them on fire.
Though their Warlord trait is reduce all damage inflicted on your Warlord by 1 to a minimum of 1. For example, if your Warlord fails a saving throw against a weapon that inflicts 3 damage, it will only lose 2 wounds. I don't know why you'd take this, because you can take Urian.
Yeah.
And Urian has something that's even better than that.
Yep.
Just naturally, and he is, you guessed it, Prophet to the Flesh.
Prophet to the Flesh.
The relic is the Flensing Blade, Coven of the 12, homunculus only. It replaces the homunculus tools and has the following profile. It's poison weapon, but it's a 3+ poison weapon. Always wounds anything that's not a vehicle on a 3+. Neg 2 AP, D3 damage. Increases weapons damage characteristic to 3 when attacking an enemy character.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
So
It's no sniper pistol.
it's no snipe. Yeah. Let's go back to the idea of Prophets of the Flesh. First of all, Urian Rakarth is the name character, and the reason why we've mentioned him a couple times is that one of the cool things he's got. He's a standard homunculus, which that's fine. They're HQs, but any damage suffered by him is halved, which again is also really cool. He's got a 4 invul, but he adds 1 to the toughness characteristics of all Prophets of the Flesh while they're within 6 inches of him. Adding 1 to toughness is really, really good.
He adds more than that.
Yeah. Because that's a regular
That's a homunculus.
Oh, yeah, sorry. He adds 1 to the strength and leadership characteristics of Prophets of the Flesh
There you
units
go.
while they're within 6 inches of Urian.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
the
they're all
Master of
roided
Pain
up.
is, so they're roided up, but they're also Sculptor of Torments. So
Yeah,
he
yeah.
adds 1 to basically strength and toughness.
So that makes like grotesque like strength 6, which is
which is
huge.
nice,
Yeah, they wade into Bulgrin and go, okay,
Yeah.
time to rip you to shreds.
Yep.
Him with Talos, he makes Talos just meat grinders with their flails and things like that. It's crazy.
Yep.
But you didn't say the coolest part of Urien. What is the name of his weapon?
He's got the casket of flensing.
The casket of flensing.
You can only use it once per battle because it's a good thing because it's so incredibly amazing. It's 12 inches, assault 2d6, strength 3 -2, 1 damage. So I guess I just have a feeling you probably roll 2 dice and there you go. And strength 3, no damage.
I just like to think,
But it's got high AP. I mean, it's perfect for killing sisters of battle.
That's true.
Oh man, it would kill
-2.
sisters. It would like mulch through guardsmen. Like
Yeah,
guardsmen
yeah.
just die. Like goodbye guardsmen. But just like to think it's like a bunch of bees in a box that he's been saving for years. Like these bees are going to come in handy. Like there's the bees.
Yeah. So Urien is a pretty darn good named HQ, and he's Prophets of Flesh. If it was something different, if they'd switched these around a little bit, it may have been better. You might see other Coven, but you're always going to see that. Now
They literally stacked everything.
They
in Prophets of Flesh, all of it.
Yeah.
All the best stuff.
Now, we talk about witch cults being kind of like you can pick either one of those. The name character for the witch cults is Lilith Hesperax, who's quite awesome.
Yep.
She's sort of a succubus, but she doesn't take combat drugs. She actually doesn't need combat drugs because she's that much. She's that cool.
Yep.
Basically, the start of the battle round, you choose to one of the following characteristics: either strength, toughness, attacks, or leadership. For some reason, I think it's that for completest sake.
Yeah, don't pick that one.
You basically increase it by 1 until the end of the battle round. So you can have any combat drug you want throughout the different rounds.
Yeah.
And that's Lilith. And she's got just a bucket of attacks. I mean, I like her penetrating blade. It's strength 3, but it's -4 AP with 1 damage. And so as you have 2 of these penetrating blades, you actually, every time you fight, she can make 1 additional attack with them. She herself has 4 attacks. So, plus she's Red Grief, so she has 5 attacks.
Yep.
And if you go the Mane of Barbs and Hooks, which is her hair, I don't know how that works, but she's got a hair attack. You can actually take 2 additional attacks with her hair as well. So she can just blend through stuff. She's cool.
Yeah. The issue is the 1 damage on the weapons.
It's 1 damage on the weapons.
She's not that great at fighting other characters.
She's not.
Her native 3-up invul is very good.
Oh,
Her
yeah,
native
that's
3-up invul is
really
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
If you could give her a Shardnet, she'd be really, really good. She's got a 3-up invul. You reroll hit and wound rolls for attacks made that target characters. So
that is like, that helps out.
She can go in there.
Yeah.
And obviously hit rolls of 1 for Cult of Strife units, which I think the other succubus has. So she has the no escape rule, which is you roll off for infantry unit within 1 inches. You can fall back if the player wins a roll off. The Shardnet rule, which you can give to witches and I think succubus as well. Right?
Yeah.
And
you can,
the Shardnet rule increases
that is the natural rule of the witch. You have to beat them. You have to beat them. The Shardnet makes your opponent roll a D3.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
You roll a D6, they roll a D3.
Yeah.
So they have to roll.
really hook up.
They have to
roll well.
The odds are it's like 85% or something that they're staying there.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So all witches basically want to lock you down in combat, and they have decent invuls in combat.
Well, they have a 4-up invul in combat.
Yeah.
It's great.
And so Lilith has a 3-up, which makes it a little bit better. And especially the Shardnet is basically with the D3 roll off. That's really, really good. You're locking something down.
Yeah.
And keep it in mind, Lilith is 80 points.
Yeah.
She is cheap.
Oh, yeah.
She is cheap.
None of these characters we've mentioned are expensive.
Yeah.
That Archon loaded for Bear is like sub 100.
Yeah.
A
Easy.
blaster, phantom grenade launcher, sub 100.
Like base bargain.
Yeah.
Archon is like 65 points, 67 points with
Yeah.
with a splinter pistol and a venom blade. But these characters, if they can get there, they do work.
Yep. And so those are the only 2 named characters. There's not a name because Vect is gone. Then they got rid of a lot of other stuff. But in the Cabal, you have Archons and you have Warriors, and Warriors are just they're just T3. They can take T3 5-up saves, and they can take Splinter Weapons for rifles, or they can take a blaster or a shredder or a special or a heavy weapon.
Yeah, I'd recommend blasters.
Usually blasters you see. The cult is the succubus, the Lilith, or the witches, which witches are with the 4-up invul. They're not killing things in melee. That's not their role. Their role is really just to lock things down.
They kill other
cheap
weak
characters.
infantry.
Yeah, they killed.
You know, like-
yes, you're right. They
Like
killed-
guardsmen just.
Yeah,
And there's like all sorts of like weird special weapons that you can give.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You can give witches that are like hydro gauntlets and razor flails and blah,
That's
blah,
true.
blah. And no, you don't really see them a whole lot. I mean, back in the day when you used to give them all haywire grenades, that was
cool.
business.
Oh,
when,
yeah.
when they could all have haywire grenades and they would just high building,
Yeah.
like high vehicle, you die now type
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
That they are there for horde clearing.
Mm-hmm.
They are there to be a giant pain in the butt.
Yep.
They're cheap. They're
Yep.
super cheap.
Yep, and if you're locking things down or you're clearing out screens, you're dictating a lot of stuff. You're forcing down. Like, I think if you can really run witches well, you're going to do pretty well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, every
and-
time go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, from Index to Codex, in the Index and in all editions before this,
Yep.
they only had a 6-up armor save.
Yeah.
They had a t-shirt save. In the Codex, they gave them a 6-up invul save to shooting.
yeah,
And
which
they have that 6-up invul to shooting, then they have a 4-up invul in combat, and they can do work.
Yep, yep, for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
I was just going to say, like, there are a lot of armies that just really don't want witches to be in them. Like, a lot
Yeah.
of the types of IG. Now, I'm happy I play Catagen.
Yeah.
Because witches lock up my Catagen guys. I'm like, okay, pile in. Let's
Yeah.
fight. Like,
Yeah.
fix bayonets, boys.
Yeah,
But against a lot of different IG, they're just not going to want to really be touching
Yeah.
these kind of witches because they're not going to be able to leave. They're
Yeah.
not going to be able to shoot the witches. You know, they're really useful utility against a lot of armies.
yeah, yeah. And then racks, like we talked about, they're just really good. They're just they're good. They're good in that they stand there and don't die as easily as other things.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say they're really good, but they're
For
good
8 points?
for the cheapness that they are and sitting on an objective. And we talked about the last podcast about taking secondaries. You could do worse than having a rack as an engineer.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
So
totally.
they do a pretty good job just from standing there. So those are, actually, if you look at the favorite different units, the HQs and troops, we've pretty much covered those for the different Cabal, Cult, and Covens. So let's chat a little bit about the elite slot. And the elite slot, I think heads and tails, grotesques are probably the best elite unit in the game. And they are Coven only. And grotesques are they're just good.
They're monsters.
They're
yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah.
So a grotesque is...
So grotesques they are naturally a toughness 5.
Yeah, so yeah,
Go full
T5.
6 because of
Yeah,
hemoes.
they usually you will not see them without a homunculus around them.
Yeah.
Usually.
So they'll be T6.
They'll
with the
usually be
homunculus,
T6. They have 4 wounds, and 4 wounds is huge because they can be that nasty, annoying thing for when people. I rolled a 3 on my D3.
Yeah.
Cool. That still kills a majority of one, and then when you
Yeah.
roll a 3 on your next
Yeah.
one, that still just finishes off that.
Yeah.
Having 4 wounds is so frustrating.
It's kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
the Talos having 7 wounds.
Yes.
Those breakpoints
Yep.
are obnoxious as hell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because you have both played Reapers
Yeah.
quite a bit over the last year and a half.
Yeah, and
Grotesques feel terrible to
yeah.
shoot at with Reapers.
Yeah, so they're going to be T6 because you're going to have them. They're T5 normally.
They're gonna be T6. They do not move very fast, but they don't need to.
Nope.
Yeah.
They don't have an armor save because they don't need to.
Yeah, 7 inches. Yeah, they have a 5-up invul, but you're going to take profits of flesh, so they have a 4-up
Can
invul.
we pause for a second
do
and,
have 7
point out what he just said?
Yeah.
They don't move very fast. How fast do they move?
7 inches.
7 inches. These are walking walls of flesh that are tougher than my Bulgrin, and they move 7 inches. Eldar privilege.
They move slow for the rest of the army.
Yeah,
that is for sure. They can't
is true.
They can't
True.
keep up.
Yeah.
They are the tubby kid trying to keep up with Big Brother.
Yep.
That they have 4 attacks base. Base.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they hit on 3s, keeping in mind turn 3 they get +1 to
Yeah.
hit. So they are hitting on 2s on
Yep.
turn 3.
Yep.
And there's a stratagem or a relic, I forget which one, that lets you treat it as the turn
stratagem.
turn
Yeah.
4.
Yep.
So if you really, really want to do something,
Yeah.
you can pop that in turn 2. They're re-rolling. They're hitting on
+1.
2s.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is pretty insane. They have 2 weapons to choose from that kind of
The flesh gauntlet and the monstrous cleaver.
Yeah, monstrous cleaver for bigger things because it has -2.
Yeah.
And it gives you an additional attack.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the flesh gauntlet that does mortals
Yeah, on 6s.
on
Yeah.
6s. And keep in mind, it is still that on a roll of a 6+, you do
Is
a
it
mortal.
to hit or to wound?
It's to
It's a wound. Sorry,
Wound,
it's a
yes.
wound.
Yeah, okay.
yes.
It's a roll
Okay.
6.
Okay,
Yeah.
they don't have a. I don't think they have any way
They
of
don't have a
modifying,
+1 to wound.
modifying to wound.
So usually you'd use the cleavers, then I would imagine. But
Usually,
yeah.
And they are only 35 points apiece.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah.
It is less than 10 points a wound for them.
How much? Okay, I hate comparing units because they're different. But
You're gonna ask
Bolgren,
about Bolgren.
yeah.
I think 42.
Okay, but Bolgren do benefit from psychic powers and things to buff them.
So the big thing about Bolgren is that they're going to, instead of a 4+ invuln, like Grotesques, they're going to be walking around typically with a 3+ invuln.
Yep.
They both get, honestly, a similar number of attacks on the charge. The Bolgren can get -1 to be hit.
Yeah.
From the psychic power, which Grotesques don't have.
Yeah.
But, no, I mean, if you're doing a straight comparison there, I'd lean Grotesques.
Yeah.
Like on a 1v1, they win.
Yeah, but the gist of it is they serve the same purposes. They're just such a nasty, beefy unit in the middle that holds the center.
One of the buffs that they gave them from 7th and Index to now, I don't know if it was this way in the Index, but it was the last couple editions, is Grotesques. Their bad thing was that they needed a babysitter because they were leadership 4.
Yeah,
And they had to have a babysitter with them. They had to have a homunculus there with them to be in the unit when you could join characters as units to make them not run. Well, I mean, now they're leadership 8.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't matter.
They don't. That's so funny. They just took that mechanic away completely. Yeah. They're like, oh, they're just a normal unit now. Yeah.
Does the cleaver do 2 damage, or is it just 1? I can't remember.
It's -2. It's only 1 damage.
Only 1 damage.
But but with that thing, they get 5 attacks.
Yeah. And then isn't there? Well, and then we didn't mention. I mean, this is true for all of the Coven.
Yeah.
They have a 5-up feel no pain. They have that 5 no pain.
Yes.
That's addition.
They have
4 wounds.
They have
Is it a 6?
Okay,
it's a 6 feel no pain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So because it's power from pain. So we should point out that in order to kill a Grotesque, 4 wounds is obnoxious.
Yes.
Really obnoxious.
Yes.
But
Toughness 6.
They're toughness 6. They are a 4-up invul.
Yes.
And then they have a 6-up ignore wound. So they are obnoxious to shift.
For 35 points.
For 30.
For
For 35 points. It's not bad. I mean, you can give them the liquefier gun, but the liquefier gun is it's kind of,
it's funny.
Yeah. All right. So that's probably the best elite choice, and that's Coven specific.
Well, because the elite choices for Dark Eldar are not great.
No,
I mean,
Court of the Archon if you want to be lore based, but we
please
don't
don't
say
say Court of the Archon.
We're not going to talk about those.
We don't have time to talk about how awful they are. Mandrakes are not bad.
No,
they're okay. Yeah.
Mandrakes can drop in and do a lot of. They were better when they had Doom behind them.
I think without Doom
to do mortals.
Yeah,
because Mandrakes can just pop out and like, hi, gotcha, and they just spit a bunch of acid at you, basically, or they throw a bunch of acid at you with their hands. Incubi are just so bad.
No,
and they're
I know.
Gorgeous models.
They're
They're
so
Amazing.
cool.
They're some of my favorite Dark Eldar models. They're just terrible.
Yeah,
the Elites is not great.
Yeah, let's go to fast attack.
Yeah.
Now the Hellions are really, really squishy. They're pretty cool, but they're super squishy. The Reavers are not what they used to be.
No.
Although I imagine if you took the advance in charge witch cult, you could make some work
There's
out
some
of
play
them
there.
because they're fast. They
There's
could do
some
some
play.
stuff.
Yeah, they could be, especially with some. We're not covering stratagems this time, but there are a couple stratagems in there that would that really make Reavers and Hellions interesting.
Yeah.
I will stop at interesting.
Yeah, that's about it.
That one.
To me, I think the best fast attack is a Scourge because it has you can drop it down because it has wings. They are only T3, strength 3. They're just a standard Dark Eldar. They do move 14 inches, so they got some movement on them, and of course you can drop them down. But the reason why I like the Scourges is you can take the different weapon choices. You can take 4 of them for unit of 5. So you can take 4 Shredders, or you can take 4 Haywire, or you can take 4 Shard Carbines, which you probably wouldn't take. You really wanted to take, you could take Blasters if you liked. So the Scourges are kind of like a nice special weapon caddy, and they're to me, I like the Blaster Scourges, and then Shredder Scourges are really nice, kind of a 1-2. Like I can go after infantry or I can go after vehicles. So
well, the unfortunate part is that you could give them Dark Lances.
But they're heavy.
But they're heavy.
Yeah.
That means you'd probably start them on the board.
Yep.
But they won't benefit from the Archon because they're not a Cabal.
Yep. That's true.
They're a mercenary.
Yep.
You don't want to put that many points into a T3 unit with 1 wound and a 4-up save, 6-up invul.
Yeah.
You just don't. Shredders are pretty good because they can just drop in and just
Yep.
blow through screens. They were better when you could drop them in and then fire and fade them behind a building.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
Oh, you
So
can't
they-
use fire and fade on them?
No,
Not-
because they
not-
deep struck.
Not after they've
Oh,
come down.
because they come down. Yeah, that's
Yep.
unfortunate. Yep.
Blasters are still expensive for me to do, for me to justify. The shard carbines are interesting. They would serve the same function as my swooping hawks.
And we all know how much you love your swooping hawks.
Love swooping hawks so much. You drop in, you do a bunch of anti-infantry shots, then you die.
Yep.
And you do it for like 60, 65 points or
Yeah.
7 or like 70 some points like that.
That's true.
You are there to be annoying. You are there to maybe get a line breaker, or you're there to get a behind enemy lines,
Yeah.
or to capture that sneaky objective. But yeah, try not to put too many points into them.
Yeah,
They die.
there are some, again, we're not really covering strats. There are a few strats that you can actually use with them to, if you put them in a spot where they do damage, but they're annoying and your enemy isn't necessarily going to want to dedicate, you can make them a little bit more survivable.
Yeah.
Get them a pretty good save and cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're okay.
Yeah.
They're okay.
Now, the heavy support has two of the best.
Yes.
Talos and Ravagers. Mm-hmm. And
A lot of lists have both.
yeah, Ravagers are just really, really good, especially
Yes.
Disintegrator Ravagers.
Yes.
They are just, I don't know. Let's go through Talos real quick. So, Matt, you've run Talos often.
Yes. I've run them.
Let's talk about them. What's their, what do they have
So
here?
I have 7 of them, so I might as well run them. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, got
Because you
to
used to use the Corpse Thief Claw. Yeah. there.
Corpse Thief Claw with the Dark Artisan, so I was running seven Talos.
So they're T6, meaning they're T7 with the homunculus.
And they're
Yep,
T7.
you're gonna see them. They have the same 5-up invul, so the Prophets of Flesh. They'll be 4-up
4-up
invul.
invul.
Yep. They have a strength 6, so they'll be strength 7 with Urian if you're running them with Urian.
Which you should.
Yeah, which you should. The 7 wounds is what makes them interesting because, like you said, I mean, 3, 4, and 7 are just obnoxious breakpoints because you're just not. Even D3 weapons, they're going to take 1, 2, sometimes 3 if you roll terribly.
Yep.
For grotesques and then for Talos is even more so. So they're really, really hard to kill.
Yes.
Yeah. On average, 2 las cannons going through doesn't kill it because that has that 6 no pain.
Yep.
So you do 7 wounds on average, and then it goes, okay, I passed 1. Okay, I'm up.
Yeah.
It feels so bad. It feels so bad.
They move 8 inches and they have fly because that's actually part of the FAQ.
Yep.
So, which is nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just so funny that they're on a skimmer base, right? They're on they're on the same base as a Venom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They float.
Yep.
They
Right?
float.
But they never had fly. And like, I don't really get this. I mean, where are their legs that they traverse on the ground with?
Oh,
but
yeah.
they finally gave them fly.
Yep.
The big thing about Talos is that they're big, they're scary, they move fast at 8 inches.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, they can keep up with everybody else, and they have Haywire just stock. Their Haywire blasters
Yes.
are the cheapest things.
Yep.
They are
Oh, yeah.
stock.
Yep.
Yep.
So I mean, it is a big point where a big unit of 3 can shoot those Haywire blasters. Yeah, they only hit on 4s, but nobody cares. Then they can move. They can move right after that.
Yeah.
They can move after they fire, so it gets another 7 inches. They can move, 15 to 21 inches a turn.
Yep.
I mean, they're not going to be able to charge after that, but
Yep.
hey, they can get up there pretty quick.
Yeah.
Their versatility is like none other.
They're
because-
super cool. Yeah.
because they have a chain flail for the little guys because they come stock with 5 attacks. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're going to be strength 7.
They have 5 attacks. You make 2 hit rolls for every chain flail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're just
So,
blenders.
You get 10 attacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There are stratagems that help them with that we can go in later, but 10 attacks per Talos
Yeah.
that hit on 3s can be, advanced with power from pain so they hit on 2s.
Yeah.
They can mulch infantry, and
Yep.
if it's something bigger that they're going into, they use the macro scalpel, which with Urian, they're strength 7, right?
Yep.
If Urian's behind them, because Urian will often be behind them.
Yep.
The macro scalpel makes them strength 8.
Yeah.
Strength
yeah.
8, neg 2, 2
Massive
damage.
breakpoints.
Yeah.
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 They will 5 attacks with that. They will wreck a knight.
Yeah. Yeah. That's gross. So the Talos are super cool because you can build them. And by the way,
Yeah.
it's one of the best kits. Their
That's a
kits
good
are
kit, yeah.
so
Oh, yeah.
freaking
Yeah,
good.
they're
So
really
many
cool.
good bits and stuff for it. So just as a plastic kit, I absolutely love the Talos.
The one thing about Talos that I would
Yeah.
point out, they give up secondaries.
Yeah.
They do.
They do.
Yeah.
And they're really easy picks
For
because
for your playing ITC. Yeah.
as far as I remember, Big Game Hunter is 7.
It's 7. Yep.
Yeah,
They-
it's still 7.
Yeah, so
each
it's
Talos
literally
gives
is-
up a point.
Yeah.
And if they have enough of them, you could theoretically, because they're in units with each other,
Yeah.
you could do gangbusters.
Yeah. You can do both.
You could do gangbusters
If you take
and
enough.
big game hunter and get like full points off of
Which
6 of them.
which is, in our last episode we talked to the
7.
ITC missions. I think that's why I like them, because the secondaries. Yeah, I'll take a bunch of Talos. Okay, well I have a weakness when it comes to winning a battle. It's easy to take secondaries against me. So there's also the Chronos, which I've never seen. It's interesting. The only thing that Chronos has I think is interesting is it has a spirit probe. You can reroll wound rolls of 1 for units in the fight phase if they're within 6 inches of a Chronos with the spirit probe. So you could take a single Chronos if you wanted to fill out like a spearhead detachment. You could take a Chronos and 2 units of Talos and kind of use it to sort of buff them around a little bit.
The only place that I've seen this is somebody has a spearhead of Prophets of the Flesh. They have Urian. They have 6 Talos, and they need a cheap third heavy support. And it's a Chronos. It just follows behind.
Just follows along. Yeah. Yep. The other really good heavy support is a Ravager. The Ravager is it's a boat like the Raider, but the Ravager actually has a increased toughness.
Yep.
Surprisingly, it's T6,
which makes no sense because it's the same exact model, just with two
additional things. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ravager has 10 wounds, so it moves 14 inches. But really, you can take lances or disintegrators. You can take 3. One of any of those 3. So you often see disintegrators. Occasionally you'll see a single dark lance and 2 disintegrators.
Which I'm more in favor of.
Yeah. But
especially now with the Doom nerf.
Yeah.
I think you should be putting bright lances in.
So you take a lance, 3 lances or 3 disintegrators or whatever combination you want.
Yeah.
But the Ravagers are good, especially with our Archon with the Rid of the Living Muse to reroll ones.
Yes. It is a fire base that is matched almost by none.
Yep.
Considering how cheap they are. 1 Ravager with all 3 disintegrators is 125 points.
Yep.
Yeah. It's 10 wounds, 5 up invul, 6 up, feel no pain at times. If you're running it the right way.
Yeah.
And it sits with an Archon, rerolls 1s to hit and rerolls 1s to wound.
Yeah.
And it just shreds things. I mean, toughness 5 is a good strength. It won't wound everything efficiently, but what it does wound, it usually gets through because it's neg 3.
Yeah,
it's very good
for sure. And they used to be better when you could deep strike them in your own deployment zone turn 1.
Can't do that anymore.
Oftentimes you're gonna have to take them down.
My
in
heart
turn
bleeds.
2. I know, I'm sure. Yeah. The transport options, you basically have Raiders and you have Venoms.
Pick a bunch of them.
I don't. I think there's always been a debate among Dark Eldar players: should I go run Raiders or should I run Venoms? And I guess it just kind of depends. I know. Is there one that's
Venom spam right now?
Yeah, taking lots of Venoms. Yeah.
So Dark Eldar kind of have an advantage that isn't really talked about that no other army has that has made it through so many FAQs. So obviously GW meant for it to be there.
Yep.
It's ride share.
Yeah.
So for the rest of us schmucks. And I'm a Dark Eldar player, so I take advantage of this every once in a while. You have to keep a transport. That transport can only transport members of that craft world, that chapter, that legion. It can only transport that. Not Dark Eldar. A raider, in theory, could have a homunculus, a succubi, an archon, warriors, you name it. It could have a mix and mash of everything.
You can actually do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So what you can do is you can have your transports as if you really want to run them as Blackheart, you could take dedicated transports for your planes or your Ravagers, and then put your Obsidian Rose guys in your Blackheart transports.
With the 24-inch blasters. Wow, that's interesting.
In a raider, in a Venom that has a 6-up, feel no pain.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently it's as intended.
Because that's no other codex has that.
No other codex has it, and it's made it through like 3 or 2 FAQs now.
Yeah.
The only Cabal that doesn't really hold for is Flayed Skull. Because you have to have a Flayed Skull unit and a Flayed Skull transport to get all the benefits. That makes sense. Yeah. But Raiders they have a transport capacity of 10 and Venoms have 5. I think what's interesting is you can't run an Archon with a unit of 5 warriors in a Venom.
You just started another thread on the Dark City message board. This has been a wailing cry of the Dark Eldar community for a very long time.
You know what? And I think it's fine because if you're going to have your Archon run around in a Venom, you can give him a Lamian, a cheap Court of the Archon, so that if it explodes, he doesn't die on a 1. But you
give him an Urgle.
Yeah,
Urgle.
I'm a friggin' Urgle.
An old little minion.
But both Venoms and Raiders are good. The Raider, you can take on its prow, you can take a Dark Lance or Disintegrator Cannon, so it's kind of a little mini Ravager. The Venom just has Splinter Rifles or Splinter Cannons, and so those are the good things.
Yep.
I actually think that the flyers for Dark Eldar are also good. So Dark Eldar have just great vehicles. I mean, the Razor Wing jet fighter is cheap. It's like
135
35 points for a stinking flyer. If it's a Cabal of the Black Heart, it's got a 6-up. It also has, of course, a 5-up invul. It's got 10 wounds. It's T6. But the gist of it is that you can take 2 Disintegrator Cannons or 2 Dark Lances, which are quite good, as we've talked about. And usually you'll take a Splinter Rifle with it. It has a Splinter Rifle, and it also has missiles, which are pretty versatile, and they're 48-inch range. Yep. So the Razor Wing fighters, because they're cheap and they could move around and they have, they're just a flyer, there's a lot of benefits to taking Razor Wing fighters.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Well, they move super fast. Like they have like a 72-inch range just from their move. They don't even have to flat out for that.
Yeah,
yep.
That's
the one thing that they don't
supersonic.
have is Vector Dancer.
They don't have
so you got to
Vector
be careful
Dancer.
with that.
Yeah,
they can fly themselves off the table.
You got to run them like a normal flyer.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't
they
break
don't have
the rules.
hover and they don't have Vector Dancer. So
now the Void Raven,
a little bit more careful.
The Void Raven bomber, I love the model. I think it has a lot of power. What it has that's really powerful is it has the bomb that it drops, the Void Mine. Once per battle, as it flies over, basically it flies over a enemy unit, and they roll a d6 for every single model in the unit. On a 3+, that unit suffers a mortal wound.
It's so good that it's on a 3.
Yeah,
because
what bomb is a 4?
What's a Dark Talon?
4s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's one of the only ones that has a 3.
It's a maximum of 10, though, so you can go up to 10.
Same for the Dark
Talon.
Talon.
Same for
pretty much
most.
every bomb.
Yeah.
Except for some of the Chaos bombs get really goofy.
The one problem with the Void Raven, and this is what I found when I run it, is it's really easy to die. That if you're trying to run over some crazy unit, especially it's in a castle, and you get to the corner and you can't make that turn, you fly off the board and you're dead.
Yep.
It's really, it seems super cool, but running a Void Raven is kind of like, I've got this stupid mine I want to drop, and you're trying to get it into position, and oftentimes people get greedy and it dies because it can't actually make it back to the board.
Yeah.
So Void Raven's cool. The Dark Talon doesn't have to worry about,
because it can hover.
Because it can hover. Yeah.
I get myself in bad situations. I'm like, okay, pop it into hover. Time to advance my way out of here.
Yeah, for sure.
The other problem with the Void Raven is that once that mine is gone, a good chunk of its firepower, like its utility, is gone.
Its threat is reduced. Yeah.
I mean, it's only like 165 points. I mean, it's not super duper expensive. The Void Lances that are on that are Strength 9, like Nig 4,
which
DX
is one of the
damage.
few Strength 9 that Dark Eldar have.
It's pretty much.
good.
I think it's the only one
they
have, and the other D3 weapon they have, I wish it was auto hit.
The Dark Scythe.
The Dark Scythe. I wish it was like the Hemlock, and then we'd be kind of cooking with gas there a little bit. And it has some missiles that it doesn't have as good of missiles as the Razor Wing. I would argue, because there's only 2 options instead of 3, and you have to pay 10 points for it. You don't get it for free.
Because you're paying for the rack of
double
missiles.
check for me so that I don't trigger myself here.
Yeah.
Can it drop its bomb twice?
No.
Okay.
It's once per battle.
There is a flyer that can drop its bomb twice, and I cannot remember what it
It's
is.
probably a Forge World.
The Bunabama.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And it also explodes on a 4-up and does auto 3 mortal wounds. Those things are a hidden gem. A gem, I tell you, a gem.
Oh, the Marauder does it too. The Marauder bomber can drop twice.
Ugh. And that thing can't even fit into a deployment zone at this point. It just can't.
I don't know how you can legally play it. Like, Dawn of War, okay, your Marauder can't play.
It does.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
Yep.
All right. And the one thing I'll say about the Void Raven, just right before we move on, I like running, or I don't play Dark Eldar, but I like seeing one with 2 Razor Wings.
Yeah.
Because one of those models is getting shot the most, and it's the Void Raven.
Yeah.
And so your Razor Wing fighters tend to live a lot longer when they got a Void Raven.
You could do worse with a Cabal, the Blackheart Detachment Air Wing with a Void Raven and 2 Razor Wings. I think that's kind of a classic. All right. So that's all we have for the Cabals and the Cults and the Covens. And let's take a break and hear a word from our sponsor, Trader A. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. Trader A is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have. He'll send you a quote. You pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that TradeRay gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TradeRay.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TradeRay.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, so I think we've actually covered a lot of the highlights of the Codex, and so our next podcast we'll talk a little more. We have an interview with Scary. He's going to talk about how to play Dark Eldar or Drukhari competitively, and we'll kind of finish up our discussion with the strats and relics, and then also just get started. Like how do you build these things, because these are really, really finicky models, and they give me anxiety half the time because they're so pokey everywhere. But we'll talk a little bit about how to get started with Dark Eldar. That's all we have for this first podcast, or this first part of our discussion of Drukhari. So thanks you so much for listening to the show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us and like us on Facebook. You can leave us a review on iTunes, which helps to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show. And for $3 a month, you have access to our Discord chat. So that is all we have for part one of our discussion on the Drukhari. Thank you for listening to the Battle Hosts.
Remember to be a better gamer
and make a more painful community.
Nice. Good night.
Oh, hey, by the way, I want to start an initiative in 40K terminology. I want us to change how we refer to Feel No Pain, because we use Feel No Pain and then we have to clarify which Feel No Pain it is, right?
I know, yeah.
Anyways, is that a 6++ Feel No Pain?
Yeah.
It's worthless. Replace the F with whatever the number is, both verbally and when you type it. A 6 no pain.
Yeah.
A 6 no pain. A 5 no pain. A 4 no pain. And you type it FMP.
Yeah,
in cap.
That's good. So like
It's
3
like-
plus is a save, 3++ is invul,
Yeah.
or whatever, and then the 6 NP.
Yeah. 6 no pain.
Yeah,
Fix 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 6 no pain.
yeah.
Fix 6